Chapter 1. A Wish Comes True. It was another day in Konoha as the village was ever so busy on this mid-afternoon day. The merchants and tradesmen were busy in the market district as they tried to sell their products to the people who would gather. Liveliness and cheer could be seen in this area as the people came to and fro, to obtain goods that they either needed or didn't, so long as they got to see what was available today. This day was livelier than the rest, only for the fact that the upcoming festival was quickly approaching. The streets were exceptionally busy as many people came from all corners of the Land of Fire to experience the Grand Lunar Festival. This was a time of fun and excitement, although not too much excitement obviously, which thanks to the patrolling shinobi policing the village making sure it was safe for the festival and its attendees. With so many people quickly massing as the day grew closer, the amount of shinobi patrolling was increased as well as the rate of patrolling. Everywhere someone looked it seemed the more anticipation for the festival was showing. After all, this festival was one which made dreams come true. However, not all of the populace was busy getting ready for the festival. In fact, one person in particular was about to get a surprise that he never would have expected. This lucky person was also currently getting chased by a group of chunin who were sent after him by orders of the Hokage. Said person though was cleverer than they gave him credit for, as he soon disappeared from their sights, forcing them to all split up in search of this person. Now you might be wondering who this clever person is. I am sure. Well, perhaps clever isn't the right word when describing him, but rather unpredictable. Stepping out from the shadows of the nearby trees, a young spiky blonde-haired child smirked in amusement at his chaser's plight. "That oughta keep them off of my tail for a while," the child whispered in glee as he began to slowly emerge from the tree line. "Now to head on back before Irika-sensei finds me. It's a little too late for that, Naruto." A calm yet angry voice stated behind him, causing Naruto to jump in fright. "Ah, how'd you find me, Irika-sensei?" Naruto demanded as he shook in slight terror as his teacher's gaze was set on him. "Why, it's because I am your teacher, and so I know you better than those shinobi," Irika answered while crouching down to Naruto's level before pulling out some rope. "Now then, why don't we get back to class and then we'll go see the Hokage about what you just did." Naruto was utterly terrified at how his teacher was smiling all the same while speaking to him. It was something that he had never came to enjoy, and for good reason. Within a matter of minutes, Naruto was back in the Shinobi Academy and tied up in front of the class again. To say Naruto was having a good day was a little misleading, as it was fine until he got caught painting the Hokage monument. Now then, since everyone is back and accounted for, the class will continue as planned, and without any further incidents, Irika announced, with the last part being directed towards Naruto. Class for the most part was much like any other, with the class geniuses exceeding praise while people who were like Naruto failed for the most part. Naruto had known for a while that because of his large chakra reserve that it would be difficult for him to do what others his age could do, so he would often stay after class and ask for the teacher's advice. Though that was when he didn't feel like pranking anyone afterwards though. Today would be one of those few exceptions where he wouldn't be able to do either of the two after classes ended today, as he was a dead man walking, so to speak, so once class ended Naruto didn't even bother getting up. Instead, he waited for everyone to leave and for Irika to wave him over to him before moving on to the Hokage's tower. It didn't take long for them to reach the Hokage's tower, where they soon found themselves in the third Hokage's office. The elder man just sighed as he knew that this wasn't the first instance where Naruto was called into his office. "Naruto, would you care to explain why it was that you decided to deface the Hokage monument by painting on it?" Sarutobi demanded as he inhaled the tobacco that was ignited in his pipe. "Because one day I'm going to surpass each and every one of those guys, as well as you, old man, once I become Hokage," Naruto exclaimed, getting a bit of a surprised look from both his sensei Irika and the third Hokage. "And when that day comes, everyone in the village will yelling my name." Irika just facepalmed in response, while Sarutobi sighed. "Naruto, that does not give you an excuse to deface public property, especially one such as the monument," Sarutobi explained. "Normally, if such a thing was ever done, the person responsible would be sentenced to 2 years of community service, as well as paying a fine of about 2,957,921.93 yen. Hearing the amount, Naruto instantly felt the shock and paled because of it. "Of course, seeing as how you are still a minor, and I'm pretty sure that you don't want this information to reach certain individuals' ears, I'll give you another option," Sarutobi offered, making Naruto quickly refocus to the elderly Hokage. "Instead, you can clean up the monument that you have defaced, and you will have to assist the preparations of the Grand Lunar Festival that will begin in 5 days. The choice is yours." Knowing that the latter was best option, Naruto took it and soon found himself cleaning up the paint that was all over the Hokage monument. Besides that, way was much safer than what could happen if he took the former, and just thinking about it made him shudder, which had been noticed by the other two individuals in the room who knew exactly what he was thinking. "I think I'll just take the last option," Naruto answered, and Sarutobi then took the paper that had the amount of yen as well as the punishment on it and crumbled it up and threw it away in the bin beside his desk. "Very well, Naruto, you will begin after class each day until the day of the festival, and I'll make sure that she doesn't hear a word about it. Deal?" Sarutobi informed before confirming the deal between him and Naruto. "Definitely a deal from me," Naruto answered. "Then you may leave now. Although Irika could stay here for a couple more minutes, I have the information revolving around this year's graduation," Sarutobi asked. Irika nodded and not wanting to stick around, or rather he couldn't. Naruto made his way out of the Hokage's tower and he headed towards the Hokage monument. Once up there, he found that Irika was already up there with a bunch of buckets and washcloths. Getting started by grabbing one of each, Naruto just hoped that word hadn't gotten to the hospital yet about what he had done yet. "I didn't even know how much my prank nearly cost them. I need to be more careful when doing pranks now, otherwise I might know what it's like to fly." Luckily for Naruto, time was passing by rather quickly, but to him, he didn't even notice it until Irika told him. It had been 2 hours now and he still wasn't close to finishing. However, he was close to finishing the third's head. The reason as to why he started on this one was because he knew that the old man didn't like what he had done to it and Naruto was not willing to risk anything that the old man could do. Even though Naruto knew that the third Hokage wouldn't have done anything, it was also sort of out of courtesy for the old man, considering that he did run the entire village, which Naruto could only guess was hard considering how at times he noticed that Sarutobi was stressed out a lot of the time. Naruto didn't have to look up to know that Irika was watching him work. After all, this is something that has happened before, although just not in this situation. Irika noticed that Naruto gave a quick glance up towards him before returning to work. "You don't leave here until every drop of paint is gone," Irika stated. "So? It's not like there's anyone waiting at home for me right now. And considering they're still working, I won't probably get to see them until the day of the festival," Naruto muttered unintentionally loud enough so that Irika could hear it. Though Irika didn't admit it, he understood Naruto a lot more than the kid knew. He saw himself in Naruto a lot and knew how busy his guardians were. So Irika decided to do something for his student. "Hey Naruto, tell you what, if you hurry up and finish, I'll treat you to some ramen." This got Naruto's attention right away as he was quick to respond with an "okay," followed by an intense cleaning montage. Seeing how determined Naruto became after mentioning his favorite food, Irika could only chuckle at Naruto's antics. "If only you were as enthusiastic with school, you might have even been able to give Sasuke a challenge," Irika thought to himself before thinking about his other student for a moment. He had heard about the recent event that transpired over there at the Uchiha clan district and hoped that his student was okay. Switching back to Naruto, he noticed that he was now working on the fourth head and guessed that it wouldn't take long now. Sure enough, due to the encouragement that was ramen, Naruto had completely cleaned the Hokage monument within just 2 more hours. This meant that it was right around dinner time and the perfect time to go and get something to eat. It didn't take long to get to the ramen stand, and with that, time flew by for both Naruto and Irika, as well as a good amount of Irika's hard-earned money. Several days have passed now and Naruto was all but exhausted. Having to set up multiple booths as well as placing decorations all around key areas of the village and having to help with the floats has taken its toll on the young boy as he was beyond tired. Looking around though, Naruto did feel good about seeing how everything looks. All that hard work really paid off. "Thanks again, kid." One of men from the festival committee expressed his thanks. "Too bad I can't pay you." "It's no big deal, technically I'm the one who is to blame for that, but I will say that looking around it does look really good," Naruto stated, to which the man agreed. "Tell you what, kid, if you come back and help again next year, I'll pay you pretty good considering how well you did this year," the man stated, to which Naruto just grinned. "Thanks. But that all depends on what I'll be doing next year, seeing as how I plan on graduating from the academy this coming year," Naruto explained. "Oh, then I wish you luck in your future career," the man stated before watching as Naruto got up to leave. Waving goodbye to the man as well as a few of the other guys who were there, Naruto made his way homeward. Tomorrow was the Grand Lunar Festival and Naruto needed to make sure that he had everything. He acquired a new orange and black kimono from a nice old man the other day and was now looking for something very specific. A glass orb that when held towards the moon will allow you to make one wish, so they say. It wasn't really guaranteed, and it was more for traditional purposes, and that it has been one of the key parts of the festival. Everyone receives their orb at some point in their life, and usually when their chakra can be fully manipulated by another person, which is usually when they are very young. The orb itself is made from their chakra, as well as some of material of course, but it is made specifically for that one person. There are no duplicates even if someone has a twin, which makes them even more special. The orb's purpose in the festival is meant towards the end of the festival when the crescent moon was at its highest peak in the night sky. Once it was there, the orb would be held up in front of the person's eyes, allowing them to hopefully see shooting stars and be able to have a wish granted. If in the orb you spot 3 shooting stars, your wish comes true. If you only see 1-2 stars, then you will have good luck until next year, and if you see only 1, then you will have bad luck until next year. It was rather simple and something that everyone does, as both shinobi and civilians alike all hope that they can see 3 shooting stars. Naruto was heading towards the glassmakers to get his own orb, and hoped that either he'll get good luck tomorrow night or even a wish. Though he knew the odds that a wish coming true were slim to none, but considering no one has ever seen more than 2 stars through the same orb for over 200 years, there was always a possibility out there. I hope that the shop is still open because I don't want to wait until next year to see if I can get a wish, Naruto stated aloud. He tended to do that, although he has been working on fixing that, considering it wasn't wise to speak your mind so casually. Maybe I'll get lucky this year and get some good luck. It would really help improve my chances for this last upcoming year at the academy. Once he did reach the shop, though his mood had seriously dropped. The reason being was because the shop sign said closed and everything seemed to be locked up. Naruto couldn't believe his luck. He really wanted that orb, but now it seemed that he wasn't getting it this year. One of neighboring merchants who had been counting today's profits noticed Naruto and yelled out towards him. "Hey kid, if you're hoping to get your orb made, you're out of luck. The man who makes them has gotten ill and probably won't get better for the next couple days." Naruto just felt that whatever hope that he could get an orb vanished and was instead replaced with a small amount of depression. "Is there anyone else in the village that can make my orb?" Naruto asked. "Not unless you want to go to Tenzaka town. There's someone there, but I doubt that you can make it there before they close up shop tonight, and considering that tomorrow's the festival, no one's going to be open," the merchant answered. Naruto was really hitting the dumps now, but decided that he ruined his chances at getting his orb when he went and painted on the Hokage monument. Cursing himself, Naruto decided to call it a day, but before he left he thanked the merchant before heading home. Walking down the streets of Konoha was a bit crazy as it was the day before the festival, and so Naruto took to the back streets where he could hope to make it to his house in time before it got too late. The thing was though that he couldn't help but notice all the families that were crowding the main streets. He wished that he had his parents. He had nothing against his guardians, but they weren't around as much as he wished they were due to their occupations. Though when he did feel alone, he always had a feeling that he wasn't. He didn't know why that was, but he always knew that there was always someone there watching out for him when his guardians couldn't. A guardian angel perhaps, although Naruto really didn't believe such things, perhaps someone who knew his parents. The only reason Naruto figured this was because of an incident a couple years ago where he was supposedly a part of a tragic accident, even though he couldn't quite remember it. The real part of the information that he did receive was that someone had saved him from dying before disappearing. Since then he's always had that feeling. Whether he should be grateful or not he didn't know, only that he was glad to be alive. Quickly realizing that it was quickly getting dark, Naruto decided to speed up heading home. Well, better get going. No classes tomorrow, so that means that I get to enjoy the festival all day long. Naruto cheered as he raced home. Not too far away, a shadow danced across the walls before disappearing with its master. A dark figure was following Naruto, although out of sight where they wouldn't get noticed. The figure continued to follow Naruto and watched as he made it home safely before stopping. The dark cloak was wrapped firmly around the wearer's body, concealing their identity. Waiting for Naruto to get to his front door, the figure began to shift around as their arm reached for something under their cloak. Taking the object out, it was revealed that the person had pulled out a small box that was wrapped up. Looking back at Naruto, who was busy speaking with the elderly landlord, the figure jumped over towards Naruto's window. It only took a few seconds before they were finished with what they had intended to do and proceeded to leave the area without a trace. Having just into his home, Naruto decided to get something to eat when he thought he felt something familiar. Going to the source, he entered his bedroom only to find it empty. "I swear if they turn out to be a stalker, I'm going to the Hokage," Naruto stated before checking over his room one last time before shrugging and going back over towards his kitchen, fully unaware that the small box was laying on his dresser that was adjacent to his bed. That night Naruto had been busy trying to figure how to perform the standard clone jutsu. It was still one of the weakest of the few jutsu he knew, however. He wanted to get better at it so that he doesn't fall behind Sasuke any more than he already has. Ugh. Why is this so hard? Why do we even have to learn this stupid jutsu? It's not even that great. Naruto complained. Having had enough after 2 hours of trying to do the jutsu, Naruto decided it was time to call it a night. I'll just have to wait for him get back to the village before asking for some help with this jutsu. After having a long day, Naruto went and took a shower before heading off to bed. Once out of the shower, Naruto was in his room getting into his pajamas and going through his closet. Getting his kimono out for tomorrow as well as some other articles of ceremonial clothes and objects. Naruto double-checked everything before finally heading off to bed. Meanwhile, the third Hokage had just finished his paperwork when he finally felt the chakra signature disappear from the village. Seems as though you still can't bring yourself to face the child. Sarutobi sighed as he brought his pipe up to his mouth so that he could inhale the smoke of the tobacco that was burning within it. You're going to have to face him eventually, because eventually he will come take this position. Once he's done that, you'll have no choice but to face him then. It was then that knock resounded from his office door, and curious as to who it was at this hour, Sarutobi spoke up, "Come in." Following the command, the door opened to reveal another elderly man. But this one had a cane and a series of bandages covering up the right side of his face. Instantly recognizing his old rival, Sarutobi eyed the man carefully as he made his way towards his desk. "Sarutobi." The man stated it wasn't a greeting, but rather it wasn't meant to be one. "What is it, Danzo? Normally you wouldn't bother to come and see me so late unless it was urgent," Sarutobi stated. "My reason is the safety and well-being of the village, Sarutobi," Danzo countered. Danzo was serious, it seemed, and Sarutobi had hoped that whatever the man would be telling him would not cause him a serious headache. "It must be important since you came when so few people would be around," Sarutobi started. "This wouldn't be about asking for certain individuals to join Root, now would it? For once that will not be an issue tonight. Instead, this will probably be the one night that I will not attempt any form of argument with you," Danzo answered. This got Sarutobi completely by surprise, although he didn't show it. "How severe are we talking about, Danzo?" Sarutobi questioned as he became gravely serious. Danzo took note of change and knew that the old Sarutobi he fought with was back in front of him. "It will seem that we can no longer delay the inevitable. War will be coming soon, and it appears that we will no longer be able to stop it from happening," Danzo explained. Sarutobi instantly realized what Danzo was saying and didn't even need to hear the next few words to know what had just happened. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki has succumbed to death. Having woken up, Naruto knew today was the festival and couldn't wait. "Well, since I can't get a wish, I'll just have to enjoy today the best I can." Naruto grinned as he grabbed his kimono and got ready to head out. As he was heading out of his room, he finally noticed the small box on his dresser. "What the heck is this?" Looking at it more carefully, Naruto tried to open it, but for some reason he was unable to. "Why isn't this opening? It is a box, right?" Naruto asked aloud to no one in particular. Trying again, Naruto noticed a note that had been underneath the small box. The note read as such: "Wait until the moon is at its highest and then open the box and you might get lucky." Confused at first, Naruto just decided whatever and got dressed and stuffed the small box in his kimono's right pocket. Grabbing his wallet and apartment key, Naruto began heading out of his apartment. Once outside, he bumped into his landlord, who was an elderly woman who greeted him. "Good morning, Naruto. Are you heading out to the festival already?" "You can believe it. After all, there's no academy classes today, so that means I can have fun all day long." Naruto expressed his joy, to which the elder simply chuckled and waved him goodbye as she saw him off. Naruto was only a few blocks away from where the festival was being held at, and he quickly made his way in that direction. Along the way, he saw a bunch of people he recognized either from his class or from his adventures around the village. There was so much to do at the festival, Naruto didn't know where to start, but first thing first, he needed to meet up with somebody before he could do anything else. Heading over to the most likely place where he could find this person, it came to no surprise that he found them there. Sitting in front of the ladies' hot spring was an older man with long white spiky hair running all the way down his back. He was giggling as he was looking through a small peephole in the wall. Naruto just sighed as he made his way over to the man, and without getting the man's attention, Naruto stuck his right index finger in his mouth as to get his saliva on it and pulled it out. Within seconds of doing so, Naruto quickly stuck his lubricated finger into the older man's ear and yelled at the same time, "Stupid Ero-sanin, quit peeking." The result, which Naruto was hoping for, was all too enjoyable. The sudden wetness in his ear, along with the sudden loud yelling that was right behind him, caused Jiraiya to jump as he was surprised before angrily bopping his godson in the head. "What the hell, Gaki? Why did you do that?" Jiraiya yelled back in annoyance. Naruto just gave him a grin after rubbing his head. "How else was I going to get your attention? Considering you were too busy staring at those ladies? Or did you forget what today was?" Naruto grinned as he watched Jiraiya fidget with his ear. Jiraiya was still a little mad at his godson, but he shouldn't have let his guard down so easily, especially since she was still in the village. However, not one to let something like this go scot-free, Jiraiya decided to scold Naruto. "You still don't go and do what you just did to people. One of these days one of your pranks will tick off the wrong person, and then what will do?" Jiraiya berated as he tried drilling what he had just said into Naruto's thick head. "I'll worry about it then. You got to learn to have more fun, you Ero-sanin," Naruto replied. "Gaki, why I ought..." Jiraiya started before suddenly he was interrupted by the sounds of death. "Jiraiya, what do you think you were just doing?" A calm yet demonic voice asked the white-haired man, who instantly paled at the recognition of the voice. Turning around, Jiraiya met the gaze of one of his oldest and closest friends, who was the embodiment of death at the current moment. Tsunade. Jiraiya tried to speak but instantly noticed her hair was wet. It was then that he recalled noticing someone in the hot spring he knew. "Why, I was just meeting up with Naruto, and we happened to have just ran into each other." Jiraiya looked over towards his godson for support, but found that he had disappeared. Looking back towards Tsunade, he gawked as Naruto was saying hi to both Tsunade and Shizune, who had just come out of the hot spring herself. Naruto then looked over at Jiraiya and gave him a deadpan stare. "Don't get me involved in your stupid situation." Jiraiya just paled as he heard knuckles popping, and Jiraiya knew that there was no escape now. Not even 10 seconds later, most villagers would report that they thought they saw a strange flying object soar across the village. After returning from orbit, Jiraiya now sported a black eye and a broken arm, but for the most part he was lucky. Lucky that since Naruto was there, Tsunade didn't beat him nearly to death as much she would have if he wasn't there, which was something that he grateful about. Walking through the streets of Konoha was quite enjoyable, as the variety of stalls, activities, and games was enough to keep Naruto distracted, while Jiraiya kept close to him in fear of being nearly killed by Tsunade, who would send him a death glare from time to time. For the most part, the activities were enjoyable, as the group enjoyed winning games, activities, and participating in the festival. Naruto was really enjoying it because this was one of the few chances that his godparents would have enough time to spend an entire day with him, aside from Shizune, who would always check up on him. Right now, they were enjoying the parade when someone appeared to deliver a message to Tsunade and Jiraiya. The Umbu delivered the message to Jiraiya and Tsunade from the third Hokage. Naruto noticed how his godparents' attitudes changed and could only guess that something bad had just happened. Tsunade told Shizune to take Naruto and enjoy the festival, and that's what they did, while Jiraiya and Tsunade went to see their old sensei. Shizune, for her part, wasn't necessarily worried about having to watch Naruto. It was the part in which she had to try and keep up with that she had a problem with. The small blonde was full of energy, always has been, and she was nearly getting exhausted from just trying to keep up with him for no more than 2 hours. She understood how Naruto was easily able to avoid getting captured after a prank went wrong or he got caught, but still she was a seasoned shinobi taught by Tsunade herself, and yet this small blonde-haired kid was besting her endurance. For the most part, the festival was fun for Naruto, although he had wished Tsunade and Jiraiya were still with them. After all, he doesn't get to see them that much, and they had originally planned on spending the day with him. After all, Jiraiya was his godfather, and from what he got from that confusing conversation with Tsunade, they are related because of the Uzumaki and Senju clans were closely related. The only problem with that, though he had more chances to see her than Jiraiya, she was still the head doctor for the Konoha hospital, so usually he only got a chance to see her every other week or so. Noticing how much time has passed, Naruto decided to slow down his pace, much to the relief of Shizune, who took a break on a nearby bench to catch her breath. "Sorry for tiring you out, Shizune," Naruto apologized. "It's fine, Naruto. It's just I don't have as much energy as you do is all. So it can become a bit of a challenge trying to keep up with you," Shizune replied with a tired smile. Naruto, though, didn't feel that much better for tiring her out, so he went over to a nearby stall and got her a drink. After obtaining the drink, Naruto ran back to her as quick as possible and gave her the much refreshing drink. "Arigato, Naruto, that makes me feel a little bit better," Shizune thanked, to which Naruto just grinned. Looking at the time, Shizune quickly realized that it was almost time for viewing part of the festival and told Naruto that he should head up to somewhere high, so that he could get the best view of the moon. Knowing that he didn't have an orb, Naruto just decided to go with it and not worry Shizune about the fact that he didn't have one. So he left for the very place that he had recently pranked this past week. Many people he had passed along the way were getting ready as they pulled out their orbs. All of the orbs seemed to radiate differently than those around them, and Naruto took note of that as he continued on his way. Hurrying up to the top of the monument, Naruto noticed that a lot of people were gathering now that the main event of the festival was starting. Naruto just kept climbing the stairs to the top as he hoped to get a better view. It took no longer than a few minutes for him to reach the top, and from there, he saw the crescent moon begin to shine past the clouds that had blocked it earlier. It was larger than normal and with a light blue tint to its luminescent glow. Seeing the moon like this did feel sort of magical, but it was just a shame that he didn't have an orb. Naruto was so deep in concentration that was on the moon that he nearly forgot about everything else when it hit him. Reaching into his pocket, Naruto pulled out the box, and to Naruto's surprise, the box seemed to glow in the moonlight. Seals that were present on the box disappeared and Naruto heard a click. Guessing on what to do, Naruto grabbed the top of the box and pulled it off, revealing a note that Naruto looked at. Naruto, this was made before you were born. It was made especially for your first time. The note started. Picking it up, Naruto saw what it was underneath and was completely surprised. There, situated in the ceremonial box, was an orb, one that did not glow. Reading the rest of the note, Naruto learned why it wasn't glowing. This orb was pre-made just for you so that when have reached the age that you can start manipulating chakra, all you have to do is put a little bit in and it will be yours. Your parents were very anxious as they wanted to make sure you had one. They really did love you, Naruto. Never forget that. Naruto was having mixed emotions while reading this note. At one point he was happy, and another part of him was sad that he didn't get to spend this time with his parents. Putting the note aside, Naruto reached for the orb, which was rather light, and looked at it. Remembering all those lessons from the academy as well as from Tsunade and Jiraiya, Naruto tried putting some of his chakra into the orb. At first nothing happened, which disheartened Naruto at first before noticing the faint orange glow that emanating from it. It was faint at first, but then it expanded further to the point that it was the brightest object around him. Seeing this, Naruto stopped and watched as the chakra within the orb swirled before faint changes to orb began to appear. The base color became a light shade of orange while the glow became much lighter. The inside was no longer cloudy but instead see-through, which made Naruto even more excited as he watched the light die down. With that, the changes were completed, and the orb's glow had died down to a bearable level. With this, I can finally see if I can get my good luck or even a wish, Naruto cheered. Quickly bringing the orb to his eye, Naruto looked towards the moon in hopes of seeing some stars. For the first few minutes nothing happened, but then Naruto saw it, a shooting star. That was the first one. So far Naruto was going to be getting bad luck, and he really hoped that wouldn't happen. A couple more minutes passed before he finally saw the second one, and to his joy it wasn't his eye trying to mess with him after swapping eyes. 2 shooting stars were visible to him now, which meant he was going to be having good luck this year. Overjoyed at this, Naruto jumped in the air, cheered for who knows how long before he decided to look for the last time. The moon was starting to disappear behind the clouds again, which meant that the festival was coming to an end, but Naruto hoped to see at least a quick glimpse at a third shooting star. Though he continued to look, time went by and the moon was almost gone along with the shooting stars. Well, I guess there is a reason why people say that no one ever gets lucky enough to get a third shooting star. Naruto said to no one in particular. Deciding to leave, Naruto looked at the orb and noticed that it was still glowing. Thinking back to what the elderly landlord told him, if the moon disappears the orbs will stop glowing, but for some reason his was still glowing. Confused, Naruto at first thought he broke it, but then he looked up and for some strange reason he felt that he should look one last time. Doing so, Naruto's eyes widened. There, along with his other 2 stars, was another third star. Not knowing how to react to this, Naruto just stood there shocked, trying to register what he was seeing. Quickly deciding that he should make his wish, Naruto did just that. I wish to be strong. Strong enough to be recognized and to protect those close to me, Naruto begged, hoping that would be enough. Looking over at his orb, he noticed that its light had faded, and Naruto looked up and could no longer see the moon. As though waiting for some weird feeling or perhaps something strange to happen to him, Naruto found neither happening. Realizing that perhaps wishes didn't work like that, Naruto felt a little disappointed at this and decided that it was probably for the best to go and find Shizune now. Making his way towards the stairs, Naruto thought he saw something in the corner of his eye. Touring in that direction, Naruto thought he saw a shooting star, but this was different. It seemed to be getting closer. As though realizing that it was coming his way, Naruto began to freak out because a shooting star was coming straight at him like it had a grudge against him. Running as fast as he could, Naruto wasn't able to escape its path and was caught in the impact. The next thing Naruto knew, he was surrounded by light and fell into unconsciousness. Before he succumbed to the impact, Naruto thought he heard something like a voice. The darkness is starting to set in. Let it take you. Meet him there. Darkness. Darkness is all that I can see. Cold is all that I can feel. Came the strange-sounding voice, as it seemed to resonate 3 times. To fall so far and fail all the while. Hardly a king anymore, but a shadow of my former self. Waking up, Naruto found himself in a weird place. It was dark and cold, and there were so many stars glittering the night sky. The ground below him was nothing but rock, and the land was barren of any life. Where am I? Naruto wondered. He had never seen a place like this before. A child no less. Truly, this is the work of a torturous force, one bent on humiliating me even further. Came the voice again. Looking around, Naruto saw nothing and nobody at the same time. Show yourself, you coward, or do I have to come after you? Naruto yelled out to the darkness of the night. Perhaps this child isn't as pathetic as I thought, demanding me to show myself. It came again, although this time it seemed much closer than before, and yet Naruto still couldn't see who it was that was speaking. I'm warning you, I'm going to be Hokage one day, and if you think that I'm afraid of you, then you have another thing coming. Naruto yelled out, receiving an eerie chuckle from the person. Let's see if you can still be so brave once you've seen my might. The voice bellowed as the ground seemed to shake and lightning cracked around him. A large storm had formed above him, with lightning flaring and the wind howling, all the while Naruto was still trying to get a clear view of who this person was. The clouds began to move out of the ways as the sky ignited and flames trickled the air. These flames danced and waved as they flowed to a central point where they would take form. Naruto wasn't believing what he was seeing. It was almost too fantastic to be true. The flames had formed together, and with a clap of lightning, a being took form within this world. The being was very large, with golden scales covering all over its body. It had 2 large prominent wings of sorts that appeared leathery, stiff, and giving Naruto the impression of something that would swipe him over in seconds. There were 3 distinct heads, each attached to an extended neck. It had no arms but 2 strong and powerful legs with what appeared to have talon-like claws on its feet. And lastly, a tail that towards the end split into 2. Naruto was mesmerized by the creature before him, as he had never seen or heard about anything like it. Noting the look on Naruto's face, the creature grinned at how the boy was in awe of his power, as he should be. I am the great god of destruction, the king of terror and planet killer. I am King Ghidorah, Ghidorah announced loud and proud. And you, child, will be my vessel. Chapter 2. An Altered Fate. The past few minutes seemed to have left Naruto completely confused, dumbfounded, and worried. During those same few minutes, King Ghidorah was wondering whether his vessel even understood what was happening. They had been there for a few minutes now, and his vessel hadn't replied once since he stated who he was. Hey brat, are you deaf or just too stupid to understand anything I just said? King Ghidorah asked, trying to break the ice. Naruto's expression, though, hardly changed, and Ghidorah was starting to get annoyed. You stupid monkey, you had better answer me. That got Naruto's attention as his expression changed and a frown was adorned on his face. Who are you calling a monkey? You stupid lizard! Naruto shouted back, resulting in a loud and a monstrous roar being quickly directed towards him, which nearly sent him flying across wherever he was. How dare you insult me? I am a being who can wipe out all life on this planet, and I can kill you right here and now. Ghidorah roared in anger. To Ghidorah's surprise, though, Naruto didn't falter, but instead stood his ground even though his body was shaking. If you plan on hurting anyone, then you're going to have to go through me, Naruto exclaimed as he tried to look as tough as possible in front of Ghidorah. Ghidorah just laughed at Naruto, who looked pathetic in his eyes. You think that you could fight me and win? Don't make me laugh. Your body is shaking in fear. Ghidorah started as he got closer to him. You lack the ability to kill without remorse. And I can tell because your eyes reveal your weakness. So what if I'm weak? A Hokage protects their village. And since I will become the future Hokage, I will defend it with my life. Naruto tried to state without sounding too weak, as he knew that he was starting to stutter. Ghidorah just chuckled as he knew he was going to enjoy his stay. Bold words, boy. Too bad you don't have the confidence to back them up. Ghidorah's 3 heads were now on either of Naruto's sides, making it more claustrophobic as Naruto quickly realized the size difference. Luckily for you, I can't kill you. What do you mean? Naruto asked as he was still intimidated by Ghidorah's sheer size. It appears whatever forces placed me inside of your body have also created a countermeasure that prevents me from causing you any harm, Ghidorah stated as he retracted his heads back to their previous positions. A shame too, because I would have enjoyed torturing you into a slow yet extremely painful death. Naruto was rather terrified as he didn't understand much other than that this King Ghidorah was inside of him, which means this was his mindscape, and that he didn't want anything to do with Naruto. If you don't like me, then why don't you leave? Naruto forced out as he wanted to know if there was such a way to get rid of this monster. Oh, trust me, I would enjoy nothing more than to be set free upon this world and ultimately destroy it. But alas, it seems as though that there is an unknown force keeping me inside of you. Ghidorah hissed as he hated his current situation. Trapped within a living prison that should it die, then so will I. What's more, my powers have seemed to have degraded from my last battle. What an annoyance. Battle? Who would even think about fighting something as big as you? Ghidorah looked back at Naruto and said person quickly wished he hadn't asked as he saw the hatred that was burning in Ghidorah's eyes. Leaning forward to make his point, Ghidorah was once again staring down at Naruto directly in front of him. A fool whom I want to crush and ultimately kill. The killing intent was radiating from Ghidorah as he spoke with malice and bloodlust. In the future, it would be wise to keep your questions to yourself lest you wish to feel my wrath. Unable to find the strength to speak, Naruto merely nodded his head. Seeing that the boy understood, King Ghidorah relented his killer intent and backed off. Feeling the great weight finally being lifted, Naruto was able to breathe again. So what am I supposed to do now that I know that you're inside of me? Go about your business as usual, I could care less, Ghidorah answered. So long as you don't speak a word about me being inside of you, that is. The warning was there, and Naruto was taking the hint. He would not mention a word to anyone lest he deal with this monster's wrath. I actually have one last question? Naruto hesitantly asked, causing Ghidorah to growl his disapproval, causing Naruto to shrink where he stood. How do I get out of here? You're asking the wrong kaiju for that. If you recall, I can't leave this area, Ghidorah bellowed. Naruto wasn't having a good day. All he wanted was the power to become stronger. But instead he got a giant 3-headed dragon who is everything but pleasant. Suddenly something clicked into Naruto's thoughts as he looked at the dragon with curious gaze. Ghidorah noticed the change in Naruto's posture and was slightly annoyed that he wasn't cowering still. You're really strong, right? Naruto asked Ghidorah, making the gold dragon scoff in response. I've destroyed planets and conquered many races, so yes, I am strong, Ghidorah stated rudely, though Naruto didn't care about that part, which made Ghidorah slightly curious as to what the boy was thinking. Surely this child doesn't think that I would willingly serve him just because I'm stuck inside of his body? Okay, I've finally decided what we're going to do, Naruto announced, causing Ghidorah to be taken back with the sudden loud outburst full of enthusiasm. You had better realize quickly that I will not serve you just because I'm stuck in here, boy. Ghidorah was quick to express his view. I don't want you to serve me. I just want you to help me become stronger, Naruto explained. This was not the kind of response that Ghidorah had expected from a humanoid. Sure, most races would have been quick to make a slave out of him if the situation was anywhere else, but apparently Naruto was defected in some way. Come again? Ghidorah needed to clarify that what he had just heard was what he heard and not something else. I want you to help me get stronger. That way I can reach my goals even faster, Naruto expressed in his happy-go-lucky demeanor. Ghidorah was now fully concerned as his current vessel was indeed broken. What's with the weird look? Does it come to as a surprise? You are what I wished for, right? Wishing? What are you talking about? Ghidorah demanded. He didn't believe in such a thing. Only weaklings like the one he was inhabiting would do such things, not him. He had ceased with such things long ago. I made a wish during the Grand Lunar Festival after seeing 3 shooting stars before I was hit by one of them and ended up here, Naruto explained. All the while Ghidorah was trying to register what he had just heard. He remembers that he was traveling at high speeds through the galaxy before he was attacked, but after that he was adrift in space trying to let his wounds heal. Something wasn't right, and Ghidorah knew that something as simple as wish was not behind the reasoning of him being placed within Naruto's body. There are no such things as wishes, kid, best to remember that. Ghidorah stated before getting a glare from Naruto. This kid is really pushing his luck now, isn't he? Okay, Mr. Know-it-all. Then how do you explain how you ended up inside me? When the wish I made was to make me stronger? Naruto demanded, to which Ghidorah was starting to seethe at the idiocy that he is being subjected to. There is no such things as wishes, Ghidorah roared, making Naruto nearly jump out of his skin. You weaklings are all the same, praying and wishing that something good will happen if you ask for it. Well, guess what, you're just wasting your time. There is no higher intelligence out there that just magically grants your wish. No, instead it's just a pointless waste of your pitiful hope that I can't stomach seeing. Naruto was slowly realizing that he may have just pressed one of Ghidorah's buttons without realizing it, judging from his reaction. Naruto simply hid behind a rock as he noticed Ghidorah thrash about while still yelling the same thing. Talk about anger issues. Is in denial or something? Naruto wondered before noticing that one of Ghidorah's tails was heading his way, forcing him to run away from his hiding spot. Hey! Calm your scaly butt down already. Naruto yelled towards Ghidorah in hopes that he would hear him. Ghidorah did hear it and turned to look at him, although Naruto wished that he hadn't, because he was looking into the eyes of death itself. You! Ghidorah hissed, making Naruto quiver where he stood. Me? Naruto repeated with fear emanating from his voice. What gives you the right to wish and hope for something pleasant to happen to you? Ghidorah demanded, making Naruto stop his shaking as he listened to what Ghidorah was saying. You don't deserve to wish and hope. I bet you were greatly loved and adored by your parents, spoiled and loved by those around you, and told that you were special. In the real world, kid special won't save your life when someone or something comes to take it. So don't even think that you are worthy enough to make a wish when you're nothing more than an insignificant little brat. Naruto didn't respond at all, but instead simply downcasted his gaze from Ghidorah, making said dragon snort. He had listened to what Ghidorah had stated, but all those descriptions were not accurate, contrary to what Ghidorah thought. What makes you think I've had a pleasant life? Naruto asked, not looking up at Ghidorah, who had released a low bellow. My life has been everything but that. Naruto's exclamation surprised Ghidorah as he was watching this child who had the audacity to yell at him. So what, join the club? How many lives do you think I ruined? It's called life, and it will cheat you out mostly everything, Ghidorah bluntly stated. I had my parents taken from me at birth. Naruto began, much to Ghidorah's displeasure. I've been raised by my godparents, yes, but they are hardly available at times. I left the compound to start becoming independent, yes, but the loneliness was too great. The villagers are nice, but that is out of pity and respect for my parents. They don't see me as me. Kids I try to become friends with are afraid for some reason, because a rumor came out that people died around me. Now I am here and you're telling me that I have been spoiled and loved by everyone, that I have parents, that I've been called special. I've never been called special in my entire life because I have no talent. Ghidorah was still getting irked that Naruto was yelling at him. He wasn't going to believe these words that were being thrown at him until he saw Naruto's eyes glaring at him with every bit of emotion, expressing that he was telling the truth. Ghidorah didn't want to care what the boy's life was like, but Naruto was still yelling at him. You are the one who doesn't deserve to have wishes or hope, Naruto exclaimed at Ghidorah, surprising the dragon. You've said you've conquered and destroyed planets. You're the only one here not worthy of anything. Naruto had to catch his breath as he was physically drained from all of that yelling, which came to him as a surprise. Ghidorah, though, remained silent as he eyed Naruto as though waiting to see if he was done. Is that it? Or should I keep my ears covered while you yell your useless banter? Ghidorah asked, rather bland, as he saw Naruto nod his head. I'll say this, you've got balls to yell at me like that, which in your case is good news for you. Naruto picked up his head and looked at the dragon in confusion, although he was still trying to catch his breath and was unable to ask a question. Basically, brat, I'm saying that since you have a drive to give me, a kaiju that destroyed civilizations and is known as the Planet Killer, a piece of your mind, then I guess that you're not entirely spineless. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Naruto asked after finally catching his breath. You can take as you like, but that will be all that you're getting from me, Ghidorah retorted. Besides, you're going to need that resolve if you're going to survive outside your home. I know that, and that's why I want you to help me get stronger, Naruto restated his earlier statement. Ghidorah merely scoffed as he flew up into the air above Naruto. Brat, if you think that I'm just going to train you, then you have another thing coming, Ghidorah countered. What? Naruto yelled out in shock. What do you mean you're not going to train me? I showed you my resolve, didn't I? That was all that you've shown me. You're still weak in my eyes. And until you've proven that you've gotten stronger, you will never be trained by me. Ghidorah had stated before flying away into the recesses of Naruto's mind, leaving him there to think of what had just happened. Naruto was utterly displeased as he was left standing in his mindscape alone without anyone else there. A lonely barren rock floating in a dark space with no signs of life anywhere. I see that this place reflects my life pretty well, Naruto stated before turning to leave only to realize something. Wait, how do I get out of here? A couple hours had passed, and Naruto was slowly opening his eyes. His gaze was met with bright lights coming from the ceiling above him. Naruto recognized the place almost instantly and decided to sit up. Only when he did he notice that he couldn't. Allowing for his eyes to adjust, Naruto realized that he was restrained and that he had an 4 in his arm. What happened? All I remember was that jerk of a dragon leaving and I couldn't get out. Naruto had wondered what was going on until the door to his room opened and Shizune walked in and closed the door behind her. Shizune? Naruto asked, trying to get her attention. It worked because she instantly turned around and was surprised to see that Naruto was conscious for some reason. And Naruto, are you awake? She stuttered as she rushed over to see that he was. Wait here, I'll be right back. She then rushed outside the door, leaving Naruto to think why she said wait when he was stuck there unable to move. He slowly pushed that thought out of his mind as he tried to think about his current situation. Maybe she was surprised because I had that shooting star hit me on top of the Hokage monument? Naruto thought before he heard 3 pairs of footsteps coming down the hall towards his room. Looking over at the door, Naruto watched as Shizune returned with Tsunade and Jiraiya. Naruto, I see that you're conscious now, Tsunade stated as she enters doctor mode. That's Naruto called it whenever she would check on people, even him and Shizune. She carried herself professionally, only with her work. Yeah, but what happened? Naruto asked her. Tsunade seemed hesitant to answer, and it was Jiraiya who would answer his question. Naruto, you had a decent-sized meteor fall on you that carried you outside the village as it kept going. When we realized that you were underneath it, our worst fears were slowly beginning to emerge as we managed to remove it off you thanks to several volunteers. Jiraiya explained. We had original thought you were dead. But when they removed the meteor, it was revealed that you were almost completely unscathed. Naruto was surprised before he realized that he didn't feel any pain or stiffness when he first woke up. After checking you over, I noticed that your eyes had changed color to a dark red hue, which made think at first that there was internal bleeding. But that was not the case. Tsunade explained. Your entire body was unaffected by the sheer force that was delivered by the meteor, and yet when I placed the 4 in your arm, there was nothing to suggest that your body would have come out relatively unscathed. What we're saying, Naruto, is that for some reason you survived something that no one should have been able to survive, especially at your age. Jiraiya stated, making Naruto quickly guess the reason why he was still alive. Naruto, did you see anything before you fell unconscious? I saw the 3 stars in my orb before making my wish, Naruto stated, surprising the 3 others in the room, considering that no one has seen 3 stars in hundreds of years. Then after that I saw a bright light, and that was all I remember. Naruto had specifically left out the part where his 3rd star that allowed him to make his wish was the one that crashed into him, because then he would be forced to answer questions about said wish. When you saw that bright light, did you feel some sort of power within yourself building up? Jiraiya asked, confusing Naruto. Like an extension of yourself was coming out of your body? Naruto didn't understand what he was saying, and Jiraiya saw this. Naruto, did you try and use your chakra at all when you saw the bright light? Tsunade asked, making her question much easier to answer. Not really. I hadn't even thought about doing that while I was standing up there, Naruto answered honestly. This seemed to have stopped them from asking any further questions about if it was anything on his part. Then perhaps you got really lucky, like a guardian angel was watching out for you, Jiraiya suggested, only to make Naruto think about what more than likely saved him was far from being an angel. Inside the recesses of Naruto's mind, Ghidorah let out a loud and thundering sneeze. Why do I have a feeling that boy is thinking about me right now? Ghidorah thought before continuing to fly around Naruto's mind. Back in the hospital, Naruto was getting checked over Tsunade again just to be sure that he was fine before he could go. Now then, Naruto, if anyone asks why your eyes are red instead of blue, just explain to them that you were in an accident and that this was a result of it, Tsunade informed him. I gotcha, Bachan, Naruto stated, causing Tsunade to grow a tick mark on her forehead. What did I say about calling me that? Tsunade asked him to cause Naruto to smirk at her, much to her confusion. That I can call you that whenever I wanted to, and that Ero-sanin is going to go and peek on the women's bath today around noon. Naruto stated, causing Tsunade to change her appearance with a calm look on her face as she finished up Naruto before proceeding to get up and leave the room. Naruto, Tsunade started as she stopped in front of the door. Don't ever let me catch you doing what that idiot does. Understood? Naruto nodded his head before watching Tsunade walk out of the room and proceed to head over to deal with Jiraiya. Looking over at the clock, Naruto realized that Tsunade had done all his treatments on her break and felt a little bad for telling her what Jiraiya was doing. Ever since the Naruto could remember, both his godparents were tasked with a large amount of work. Tsunade oversaw the hospital here in Konoha as head doctor, while Jiraiya was busy managing the spy network he set up around the elemental nations. Both were hardly given any breaks and would sometimes be gone for long periods of time, which really left Naruto with Shizune, although if Tsunade had to leave the village she had to go to. Aside from them and a couple others, there was only 3 people in the village that Naruto got to see almost every day, the Hokage and the Ikarakus. He hadn't visited them that much in the past week, mainly because of all the work he had to do because of his last prank. Next time I'll make sure not to pull a prank around another festival. Naruto mumbled to himself as he got the rest of his things before heading outside of his room to exit the hospital. Along the way he saw Shizune being busy helping Tsunade by doing a lot of paperwork. Naruto decided to keep going, mainly so that he didn't interrupt her. Reaching the stairs, Naruto was nearly knocked down when the door leading to the stairs opened. The person who opened the door quickly realized that she had almost hit somebody and was quick to see if they were okay. I'm so sorry for not seeing you there, are you okay? A feminine voice asked. Naruto looked up and almost instantly recognized the person. It's fine, although I'm surprised to see you being so careless, Rin One-chan. Naruto jokingly stated as the young woman in front of him quickly realized who it was in front of her. Naruto, what are you doing here? You know you shouldn't bother too many people here, it is a hospital after all. Rin told him. Naruto was surprised that she hadn't been informed that he was brought in during the night, although it was not told everyone, so Naruto just didn't bring it up. I was just informing Bachan about what the Ero-sanin was up to was all. Naruto chuckled with his infamous grin on his face. Rin wasn't happy to hear that he was meddling with people again and was about to give him a stern talk when she recognized Naruto's eyes. Naruto, what happened to your eyes? She asked him to cause Naruto to sigh as he realized that she would have found out eventually. I got into a little accident last night during the festival and the result was my eyes changing colors, Naruto explained. Are you okay? Is there anything else wrong with you? Rin began asking questions, trying to see if he was truly alright. I'm fine. Just trying to make up a cool excuse to explain it to everyone at the academy tomorrow is all. Naruto grinned. But I have to go, so I'll catch you later on, Rin-ne-chan. With that, Naruto began making his way out of the hospital, and with it a remark from Rin expressing to not run in a hospital. Meanwhile, a meeting was beginning amongst the heads of the village. Sarutobi Hiruzen was leading the meeting with the others consisting of Danzo, Hamura, and Koharu. Jiraiya and Tsunade won't be able to make it to this meeting today, as both are extremely busy at the moment. Sarutobi explained to the others. Your students are quite the busy bees, aren't they, Sarutobi? Koharu commented. Too busy focusing on minuscule tasks instead of the bigger picture, if you ask me. Danzo stated gruffly. Jiraiya is currently locating a suitable candidate at the moment and Tsunade is busy managing the hospital and new applicants. Sarutobi stated, making Danzo change his opinion. Has he found anyone at the moment? Hamura asked. Sarutobi wasn't going to lie. He informed them now they haven't found anybody yet. Time is running out, Sarutobi. You know that? I am fully aware of how long the container can hold the fox. That is why I have issued the task to Jiraiya. Sarutobi stated as he went through different documentation that was provided by Jiraiya. The fool might still have his antics, but he gets serious when he needs to be. Sarutobi then handed the 3 each a copy of the documents that Jiraiya handed over to him. So, there is no eligible candidate in the Land of Fire, Koharu remarked. This is becoming trifling. Then perhaps we should look outside of the Land of Fire. There have been known survivors that have traveled across the elemental nations beforehand. Hamura commented. The problem is though we can't just kidnap them, it could lead to a diplomatic incident, and without a Jinchuriki we can't afford to be so careless. Sarutobi responded. It's a shame that the boy can't be the Jinchuriki, Danzo stated blandly, causing him to receive a couple looks from the other occupants of the room. He is half Uzumaki, but that fool who took control of the QB stopped that from happening. We do not talk about that here, Danzo, Sarutobi warned. The boy is no use to us anyway, just another civilian whose parents were famous. There's no need to go after him, Danzo added before returning to the documents. Has he tried locating anyone outside of the Land of Fire? Danzo decided to change the topic mainly because he wanted to avoid annoying Sarutobi around this time. He's starting to at this very moment, which is why he said he was going to be late, Sarutobi stated. Let's hope he finds someone soon, otherwise this get very dangerous. Hamura expressed his concern with the others nodding as they had felt the same. If worse comes to worse, Sarutobi, the situation could become desperate. Are you okay with that? Koharu asked her old teammate. Sarutobi didn't want to think about that possibility, although he knew that he would have to take it into consideration. Danzo, Sarutobi started getting the attention of his rival. If it comes down to it, see to it that no one will learn of our actions. Danzo nodded as he took this just as seriously as the others. Glad to see that you are back, Sarutobi. Maybe now one can make some progress, Danzo thought as he was careful not to reveal his thoughts and continued looking over the documents when he spotted something. Sarutobi, there is a mentioning that Jiraiya had taught an Uzumaki in this document. The third Hokage looked for the part Danzo was referring to and saw it almost as clear as day. When cross-referencing and thinking back to around that time, Sarutobi remembered the information. Yes, it was quite some time ago. Back when he, Tsunade, and Orochimaru had planned on returning to village after their fight with Hanzo. Sarutobi explained. Jiraiya had taught the young man along with his two friends, although from what information Jiraiya found out they were all killed over in aim. Danzo inwardly cursed his own foolishness back when he assisted Danzo, as he remembered seeing a red-haired boy long ago. I guess that in the future I must be extra careful with those I have killed off, Danzo thought. Sarutobi noticed the inner conflict of his rival and took note of it for the future. It still wouldn't help us if the young man had survived. We need someone with still developing chakra coils and preferably an Uzumaki. Hamura addressed with the others, stifling through the papers analyzing all the details. I'll have Jiraiya keep looking, however. It might become unlikely that we can get an Uzumaki, and if so then we must select individuals with growing chakra coils, Sarutobi informed them. So, you're saying that we must pre-select individuals beforehand. Honestly, I would hate to give anyone this burden, any soul, for the benefit of the village, but this is essential, Koharu stated. We have a couple months to find a suitable host, otherwise the QB will break free, Sarutobi expressed as he and the others continued to plan for the best and worst-case scenarios that could happen within the next few months. Following his trip from the hospital, Naruto had gone home and rested for today, which was the day the academy was picking back up. He wasn't particularly fond of going today, but he had to go if he wanted to become a shinobi. He sat down ready to eat some breakfast when he noticed something odd. Whenever he went to go and turn off / on the lights, he would get shocked for some reason. The same thing happened with the electronics he touched. It became rather annoying, making Naruto question what was going on before casting it aside as nothing but a bad morning. Eventually he made it out of his apartment and headed over towards the academy. Along the way he noticed that a couple people were looking at him. This was new, he was never the center of this much attention before unless he had just done a prank, but he was clean of pranks this past week. Naruto then remembered that his eyes were a different color, so he figured it was just that. Sure enough, once he got to the academy his thoughts were confirmed. At first when he walked in nobody paid him much mind, however, after they noticed his eyes were a different color that became a different story. Whoa! Look at Naruto, his eyes are different, someone pointed out, making Naruto shrink in his chair. Hey, what's wrong, Naruto? Tired of the color blue? Kiba remarked, much to his annoyance. If you must know, I got into an accident the other day during the festival that resulted in my eyes color changing, Naruto stated, hoping that would be enough for them. Kiba, on the other hand, just kept pecking at him. What did you do, spill a drink in your eyes or something? I mean, you pretty much suck, so I wouldn't put it past you. Kiba laughed. Naruto didn't like Kiba for a lot of reasons, but some of the main reasons was because he picked on him because he just couldn't mold or use chakra that well for some reason, which resulted in him becoming dead last in a lot of areas. Kiba wasn't that much better, but he probably figured he could get away with bullying Naruto and not worry about any repercussions. There were many times Naruto just wanted to punch Kiba in the face, but he would remind himself that it was best to not cause a fight. However, this was one of those times when Naruto didn't want to be bothered and Kiba was beginning to push his buttons. One wrong word could set off Naruto, much to the amusement of his new occupant. Ghidorah had been watching the whole scene transpire and was curious as to how far his vessel would go if he was in a fight. This will get interesting, especially since the kid got something from me when I was placed in here. Ghidorah chuckled. This was his only form of entertainment and was going to try and make the best of it by stimulating Naruto's aggressive emotions as much as possible. Kiba then noticed something was odd with Akamaru, his small dog that was residing on his head. Normally Akamaru would be enjoying his time with Kiba. However, Akamaru seemed unnerved near Naruto. It was to the point that Akamaru had silently whimpered as though trying to tell Kiba something. What's wrong with Akamaru? He's never like this? Kiba was a little worried for his animal companion and then sniffed the air around Naruto. Something is wrong. His scent is now completely different. Now it smells like a combination of a fire and a storm around him. Kiba was about to say something until Irika came in and demanded that everyone take their seats. This meant that Ghidorah would not see how much Naruto could take until he'd snap, much to the dragon's disapproval. So close, yet so far away, Ghidorah stated as he flew up to a mountaintop to rest. Time for a nap then, because I sure as hell am not going to watch any of this for over an hour. Naruto felt a little relief knowing that class was going to start. However, he still didn't like the fact that Kiba bothered him about his eyes. If anything, he should have left him alone after he was given the explanation. Looking over towards the window, Naruto noticed that Sasuke, the class genius, was looking outside the window again. He didn't blame him considering how boring these lessons were. Instead, Naruto's thoughts were elsewhere. He didn't pay much attention in class anyway because Jiraiya and Tsunade had taught him much of the material that the academy would go over. It was just utilizing his chakra was the biggest problem he had. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade tried to fix his problem, but what they suggested never worked that well. He had until the end of next year to learn to utilize his chakra. Otherwise, he might not be allowed to become a shinobi. The thought was daunting on Naruto and was especially worried about the following year. Redirecting his attention back to the class, Naruto found himself staring down one of the most complicated and boring topics he ever thought possible, Fuinjutsu. Who in the right mind would even try to understand something as stupid and complicated? Naruto thought, oblivious to his own roots. I really hope that I'll never have to use that in the future. Otherwise I'm screwed. After a brief discussion on Fuinjutsu, it was lunchtime and the class headed outside to eat. Naturally, it was at that time that everyone broke off into different groups as to eat with each other. This, however, did not include Naruto as he was forced to eat alone, something that began not long after the rumor started. There were times that someone would come up to him, but that was either for informing him of class changes or if it was Kiba and his group. They hadn't bothered him today because they were busy showing off each other with what they had to eat, while Naruto just ate on the single swing by himself. He knew that he wasn't the only loner out here, but the one thing that separated him from them was that they wanted to be alone. Sasuke was one such example. Naruto didn't even see why people liked him. His attitude and demeanor was ice cold, and those that he would talk to was only out of respect or of an absolute necessity. He tried talking to him once, but his fangirls kept him at bay and prevented any form of contact between the two. This of course led to Naruto slowly growing a grudge and becoming jealous of the prodigy Uchiha. Where many people saw Sasuke as a gifted and loyal Uchiha, Naruto saw an arrogant and self-centered idiot that he wanted to overcome. One day I'll surpass him, and then everyone will realize that I am the one who deserves the attention. Naruto continued eating as he knew that they didn't have to long to eat because they were going to have combat training next and the teachers wanted to make sure that they didn't eat too much and get sick. If they didn't want us to get sick, then they should have held off until the end of class today. Oh wait, it is the last thing today. Looking over at the group of fangirls around his now declared rival with great animosity. Feeling like someone was staring at him, Sasuke looked over and he thought he saw Naruto looking at him, but saw that he was staring at his food while eating. The announcement to come back inside was quick and everyone began cleaning up and heading over to where they would be conducting the training. This was the one thing new he had a chance at excelling in because aside from the lack of being able to use chakra as efficiently, he was trained in hand-to-hand combat. Even then, it wasn't as outstanding as some of the clan children, who had their clan teach them techniques that would make them efficient on the battlefield. Half of the stuff that Jiraiya and Tsunade wanted to teach Naruto couldn't be applied because they require significant chakra control, which he lacked in. This, however, didn't stop him from training every day. He had heard the stories of a student who was his senior who excelled without using jutsu. Irika and Mizuki were in front of the crowd of students addressing the rules and the order in which they would be fighting. Naruto noticed that they mainly focused on pitting the clan head children against non-clan children to keep their grades relative. For the most part, it was Mizuki. Irika was busy watching over the students who were combating each other to notice the difference. Approaching Mizuki, he noticed a faint glimmer of disdain. He could only guess why. Kiba was in all intents purposes Mizuki's favorite for some reason, which led Naruto to only guess who he was going to be paired up against. Sure enough, his thoughts were confirmed when he was told his match was going to be with Kiba. Naruto silently seethed as he was tired of being paired up against him and losing, only to be humiliated. Time flew rather slow as the inevitable event drew closer, and it didn't help that people were already whispering how Kiba was going to clobber him. It angered him much to his own pride. He hardly even felt remotely this much disdain over a single person before. Not even Sasuke irked him as much as Kiba. Ghidorah felt the negativity within his vessel rising and decided to see what he missed. Noticing how trivial the matter really was, he was curious if he finally had a chance to push Naruto into releasing all his hatred in the fight. A dark grin situated on each of Ghidorah's jaws as he situated himself into an upright position and began focusing his energy. Yes, what an ample opportunity to see the extent this brat will reach to crush someone he utterly despises. Ghidorah chuckled as charged up his electricity to send off for his vessel's use. However, the energy wasn't being transmitted much to Ghidorah's own displeasure. My power is being stopped by some internal problem. I must eliminate it if I want to see a great show. Ghidorah took off in search of the source that the problem was originating. Naruto's match was next, and he was starting to sweat a little. He wasn't looking forward to it, and he knew that it was mandatory. Not saying that he wouldn't participate considering he did have pride. The thought of losing to Kiba again was eating away at him, and he was becoming frustrated. "Hey Naruto, you better just give up, otherwise you're going to get your butt handed to you," a random student told him. "I don't know why he's even trying. He can't even use chakra?" a girl asked a friend, not caring if she could be heard. "Maybe he's just too stupid to give up," a random guy in his class jokingly answered, causing those around him to laugh. Naruto clenched his fists together, trying to ignore them, but they were not considering his own feelings at all. Others watching this playthrough knew better than to get involved or just didn't care enough, which was the majority. Time came when the match before his ended and Irika called him and Kiba up to begin their sparring. Naruto took to Irika's left while Kiba took his right. Both stared each other in the eyes, which made Kiba grin. "I don't know why you just call it quits. Perhaps you're just a glutton for punishment," Kiba boasted before Irika corrected him and told him to cease harassing Naruto. Irika had known that Naruto and Kiba were not on the best terms, and yet they seemed to always be paired up together. "Perhaps I need to talk with Mizuki about this reoccurring problem," Irika thought before addressing the rules to the two. "Alright, listen up you two. As I stated earlier, the first one to make contact on the other individual 3 times wins the match. You cannot use ninjutsu or genjutsu, just taijutsu. Now are you ready?" Looking at the two, Irika confirmed that both were ready before initiating the spar with a loud "Hajime." Rushing forward to throw off Kiba, Naruto swung his right fist towards Kiba's chest only for him to dodge to the side. Allowing for Naruto to pass him, Kiba took this advantage, and with Akamaru they counterattacked. The two may have been an inseparable pair, but Akamaru was still wary about fighting Naruto, which surprised some of the onlookers as well as Kiba. "Come on Akamaru, let's beat Naruto like usual," Kiba attempted as he tried to sway his dog to join him in the fight. Yet Akamaru was shaking a bit. This infuriated Kiba, who thought Naruto had done something to his dog. "Hey, what did you do to Akamaru?" Naruto used the situation to get back a few feet before answering. "I don't know what's wrong with your stupid dog. Perhaps he just knows that you can't beat me," Naruto stated. If Kiba wasn't already mad, then he was furious. Taking his family's stance, he proceeds to charge at Naruto with every intent to beat him to a pulp, something not overlooked at by Irika. He was starting to think that he should stop the match, but Mizuki had appeared to stop him from doing so. "There is no need, Irika. Naruto is a good dodger. He'll be careful to avoid Kiba, but he lacks in the strength to hit him," he stated. "That's why you paired them?" Irika responded, flabbergasted, which Mizuki quickly interjected. "I was simply pairing up the lower scores, and they were close enough. The rest of the students had already been paired up, so I paired the two together to complete the exercise," Mizuki explained as he tried to weasel his way out of the situation. After today, Mizuki, you had better watch it. Otherwise, I'll report you to the Hokage directly. Do I make myself clear? Irika whispered, trying not to be too loud for the students to hear. Mizuki nodded, as he knew better than to go against the Hokage. Naruto continued to dodge Kiba's attacks, yet he has been unable to land a single blow on Kiba as well. It irritated him to no end that he had been successful in all but landing a blow. Having large amounts of stamina made it easier for him to continue with this charade that seemed to be lasting for quite a while. Kiba, though, was finally beginning to snap and lunged at Naruto in such a way that forced Naruto into a corner, allowing him to strike the first blow. It was across Naruto's left shoulder, and it made him fall onto the ground by sheer force. "Come on and get up, Naruto!" Kiba exclaimed as he waited for Naruto to get up, only to charge again, and this time hitting him in the chest, sending him back a couple feet, scoring another point. Although by this point Irika had seen enough. "All right, Kiba, that is enough," Irika exclaimed, causing the student to look at his sensei, as the match seemed to be put on hold unless Irika was going to end it. "But sensei, he did something to Akamaru," Kiba protested. "And I'm getting back at him for doing it." "That is enough. Naruto has done nothing to Akamaru. Honestly, what makes you think he even did anything?" Irika demanded. "Akamaru is afraid of him for some reason. His eye color is different from the last time, and he even smells different. He's a freak," Kiba exclaimed. Those words repeated in Naruto's mind repeatedly, causing him to seethe. His anger and resentment were growing to unthinkable levels that no child should reach at this point in their life. Of course, Naruto wasn't a normal child, which he knew, but even still it was nearly incomprehensible for many to think of such things. Clenching his fists again, Naruto attempted to get up, but some reason he was having difficulty. At the same time, Ghidorah has been scouring across the expanses of Naruto's mind in search of the blockage, until he noticed something off in one location. Heading down to look at the strange formation, Ghidorah presumed that this was the cause of the blockage. "This must be it, whatever it is. It looks like a form of writing," Ghidorah had estimated as he looked in closer detail. "Now then, you have been the reason why I haven't been able to enjoy a great show, so that means that you have to go." Ghidorah focused a large amount of energy as he prepared to destroy whatever it was that was in front of him. The writing, like a seal, was going to be destroyed, and with it Ghidorah will be able to influence Naruto even more. The energy concentrated from his wings as it traveled up to each individual head. The power that has been used to destroy civilizations and even small planets was about to be used once again. Once fully charged, Ghidorah unleashed the concentrated energy onto the seal in the form of powerful gravity beams that obliterated it from the mindscape in a single blow. The result was a massive explosion within Naruto's mind, and a painful headache for Naruto, who cringed and grasped his head out in pain. Unaware of what he had just done, Ghidorah turned back to observe what was transpiring when he felt an increase in power amongst his vessel's body. Was that a form of restraint? Ghidorah wondered before returning to the scene before him of Naruto on the ground. If so, then I will say that this will become very entertaining. Ghidorah was chuckling as he watched Naruto lift himself up from the ground. Naruto got to his feet and had his eyes darkened. Kiba noticed that he was back up and was prepared to finish the fight. "I don't care if I get in trouble. Anyone who messes with my dog is going to get their ass handed to them," Kiba yelled as he charged forward against Irika's instructions. Getting closer, Kiba pulled back his fist, and many thought that this would be it for Naruto, as they all knew how their fights usually ended. That was what they presumed at first, before Naruto erupted with flowing chakra surrounding him and sending sparks and electricity flying from his body, startling everyone and causing Kiba to stop dead in his tracks. Everyone was taken back as they watched the chakra, which was gold, strike out at anything and everything around him. "You said that Akamaru was afraid of me. You do remember what I said earlier, right?" Naruto asked Kiba as he clenched his own fist and pulled back. Lighting enveloped the appendage, lighting it up in a golden white light. "This time, Kiba, I'm going to win." Kiba was horrified as he looked at Naruto, who stared at him with a look that sent out mass terror to those who saw it. Unable to move, Kiba found himself stuck as Naruto prepared to strike. Once the fist started swinging, Irika managed to appear before it escalated into a much more severe incident and redirected Naruto's arm away from Kiba. When he did so, the lightning shot off Naruto's arm and through the academy wall and a couple buildings. As the bolt was fired, Naruto had realized what had just happened and proceeded to calm down. The result was him beginning to lose consciousness. Naruto then proceeded to pass out fully from exhaustion, and Irika had to take him to the nurse's office, while Mizuki, who was shocked by what he had just seen, ended class for today. Kiba was checked out before being taken inside for Irika to talk to him before getting the boy's mother. Ghidorah though was impressed at the amount of killing intent Naruto had at that moment and couldn't help but sneer. However, he had accidentally altered Naruto's normal chakra when he broke the seal, causing his power to enhance Naruto's chakra. It may have been unintentional, but I will say that it was sure entertaining. This brat might just give me a good enough show if he's lucky. Ghidorah laughed before flying up into the air to fly around Naruto's mindscape once again. Chapter 3. A Foreboding Future. Waking up in a nursing room for the second time this week, Naruto felt groggy. His body was tingling, for what reason he could not understand why, and tried to get up only for the nurse to keep him down. Careful there, Naruto, you're experiencing chakra exhaustion. Something that is quite a serious issue for normal shinobi, the nurse stated. Naruto was confused as his mind was still clouded on what had caused him to end up there. What do you mean by chakra exhaustion? I haven't been able to manipulate a single drop of chakra before, Naruto asked the nurse who busy checking him over. Yes, we are fully aware of that, but it seems as though your chakra was lying dormant for some reason and that it awoke during your spar with the young Inuzuka boy. The nurse explained as Naruto finally began recalling the prior events of him in the spar and feeling anger and spite towards Kiba, as well as him charging at him before being intercepted by Irika. Is he okay? Naruto asked the nurse, who was a little surprised considering she heard that Kiba was the bully in the situation. He's perfectly fine, although your sensei Irika got in touch with his mother and informed her of the situation, so he's not out of the doghouse yet, so to speak. The nurse chuckled at the way she phrased the last part. He also informed your guardians about the issue, and they are on their way here as we speak. Come again? Naruto asked for clarification. Did you say both and not Shizune? Yes, that is right, your sensei made sure that both would show up, and for good reason I'd say, the nurse clarified. Naruto though was terrified at the fact that both were coming. Normally it would be Shizune who would show up as to be the medium between the academy and Tsunade since Jiraiya was gone for certain lengths of time on occasion. The fact that both are showing up meant that this was going to become something not short of being a large issue. No sooner had those thoughts graced his mind, Naruto heard the familiar pair of footsteps coming down the hall. Terror slowly began to build up as Naruto tried to figure out if he was in the right or not concerning the incident with the spar. He was merely defending himself for the most part, although he did try to bash in Kiba's face in the end. Still though he shouldn't get into trouble for that, right? All these thoughts were plaguing his mind before finally the pair of familiar footsteps stopped at the door to the nurse's office. There was a knock and the nurse told them that they may enter. This in turn led to the door opening, revealing both Jiraiya and Tsunade, both of their faces bearing a serious expression which made Naruto the more nervous. The nurse though was calm as can be as she finished writing something down before facing Naruto's godparents. Hello Lady Tsunade, Lord Jiraiya. I think that both of you will be glad to know that Naruto is only suffering from chakra exhaustion at the moment, however. He will need to rest for the remainder of the day if he is to be able to attend class again in 2 days. The nurse informed them. Both of his godparents were shocked at the mention of Naruto suffering from chakra exhaustion. Wait, I didn't quite hear you right. Did you say chakra exhaustion? Jiraiya asked, to which the nurse nodded in confirmation. It's quite understandable that this would be surprising considering that young Naruto here hasn't been successful at even getting a drop of chakra to manifest beforehand, the nurse stated. It was quite a surprise for everyone here at the academy as well, considering that the 4th Hokage's son, who prior to today was unable to manifest chakra, finally did so during a spar, quite eventful. Would you mind if I checked him myself? Tsunade asked the nurse, who nodded and moved out of Tsunade's way. Making her way over to Naruto, Tsunade began checking him over, and within a few moments she came to the exact same conclusion as the nurse and couldn't help but smile. Well, it seems you're a bit of a late bloomer. Naruto seemed to relax at this point and chuckled sheepishly. How exactly did this come to pass? Jiraiya asked the nurse, who then proceeded to pull out the account written by Irika. During a sparring match with Kiba Inuzuka, Naruto was pushed incredibly much to his sensei's distaste, and was about to end the match before more harm could come. However, before he could end it, Naruto had managed to unlock his chakra, so to speak, which manifested for all to see. The nurse summarized before handing over the account to Jiraiya. That is the full detailed report that I just summarized. It contains all the information for you to look over. Jiraiya proceeded to take the account from the nurse and look it over. Much of it surprised him, although a lot of it he didn't particularly like. Thank you. And do you know where the other sensei, Mizuki, is? Jiraiya asked. He has been sent home on suspension for the time being for his actions, and there is investigation into possibly other actions he took along those same lines while Irika wasn't around. The nurse mentioned. For the time being though, Naruto is allowed to return home and rest for the remainder of the day. Thank you. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade thanked as Jiraiya picked up Naruto, and they made their way over to the Senju compound. Huh? I thought I was allowed to go home? Naruto asked as he was slowly succumbing to the desire to sleep. You're staying at the compound tonight, that way we can make sure that you're alright, and besides we'll need to check you tomorrow anyway, Tsunade stated before Naruto fell into slumber. And there's another reason why. Chakra exhaustion can be pretty dangerous, although I'm surprised at the fact that he even regained consciousness, Jiraiya stated as they made their way out of the academy building. Uzumakis usually have large pools of chakra, and it takes a lot for one to suffer chakra exhaustion. When I was checking him over, I noticed that his chakra pool was steadily increasing in size. I believe that due to being dormant for so long has caused its surface at slow pace, Tsunade stated. That would explain the chakra exhaustion he is currently experiencing. Perhaps, but for now let's get back to compound first, and then head over to Sensei, he'll want to know about this. Jiraiya replied as they continued onwards to the compound. This might be a blessing in disguise. If you're thinking about suggesting putting that fox inside of him, then you're obviously not considering his own well-being. Remember what happened to the previous host. Tsunade retorted. I'm fully aware of that, however we must consider it to be an option in case we don't find someone else, and preferably after his chakra coils become more stable now that they have chakra flowing through them. Jiraiya explained as they continued their way to the Senju compound where they would drop off Naruto and then head directly to meet their sensei, the third Hokage. Arriving at their sensei's office, Tsunade and Jiraiya entered without knocking as they were already expected. Looking up from the papers on his desk, the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen was about to have a conversation that would change the future of the entire village. Tsunade, Jiraiya, come, it's time that we talk. Hiruzen motioned them over towards his desk. Sorry we're a little late, sensei. We had to take care of something involving Naruto, Jiraiya explained, causing his sensei to raise a brow. Oh. Did he get into trouble again? The third Hokage as he moved some documents around his desk so that he could put his elbows on the desk without crippling any of them. No, in fact something else happened during a spar with one of his fellow students at the academy. Jiraiya started. I see. I take it that he got injured? He asked his students as he wanted to make sure that Naruto was alright. Far from it, Naruto has awakened his chakra. Jiraiya gleamed, surprising the old Kage who couldn't help but smile. That is excellent news. I remember how hard it was for him up until now. So is he well? Hiruzen asked with excitement glimmering in his old eyes. He is currently suffering from low chakra exhaustion as a result from his spar. Tsunade began a short explanation. I left Shizune to monitor him. It appears that his chakra is slowly beginning to form the essence of his chakra pool. However, his tenketsu are having a difficult time accustoming to something that wasn't normally there for 11 years. I see. I do hope to see him walking around as good as new soon. That boy has endured enough as it is, Hiruzen stated before shifting through some of the assorted documents. This is great news to hear. However, we must begin discussing about the QB issue. Soon the umbu in the room placed up an invisible barrier preventing anyone from outside the room from listening in on their conversation. With Naruto finally able to have chakra flowing through his body now properly, and with a little time he could become the next Jinchuriki, Jiraiya suggested much to Tsunade's disapproval. Jiraiya, you can't expect his body to become accustomed to something that has just surfaced. Tsunade scolded him. Naruto needs time to get used to his chakra, and there is no way he can get accustomed to it by the time we need a Jinchuriki in barely 3 months. Tsunade, what would you want us to do if we can't find another person to become the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki? Jiraiya questioned her. Will we just sit back and allow the Kyuubi to break free of its temporary prison and destroy Konoha? I'm saying what needs to be heard when regarding Naruto's Tsunade began before their sensei. The third Hokage took over the conversation. There will be no need for him to become a Jinchuriki now. Hiruzen interrupted the two, causing both to focus their attention back onto their sensei. Good. Now it seems that I have your attention again. Sensei, are you saying that you found a possible candidate? Jiraiya asked as his sensei handed him a report for him to look at. It was a spy report on a young girl around Naruto's age with red hair and Aiz, who is currently a resident of Kusagakure. I have a couple teams already en route to the location where she is being kept. Hiruzen mentioned, surprising the two even more while he inhaled the smoke from his tobacco pipe before finally releasing it to deal with his old nerves. The party left early yesterday evening after the meeting with the other elders. Sensei, how do you know if she is viable enough to already launch a capture mission? For all we know, she might not be able to become a Jinchuriki, Jiraiya expressed as he wasn't fully convinced about his sensei's decision. Aside from that, you're willing to send a team into Kusagakure. They may prefer diplomacy, but their policies are harsh. There is no need to worry about Kusa. I sent a message with the team to give to the village head that should convince them of handing her over. The third Hokage stated as he pulled out another paper to hand to his students to look at. Besides, I believe it would be in the girl's best interest considering the information we obtained about her. And as for her being a viable candidate, she has the blood of the Uzumaki running through her veins, much like another Uzumaki did before her, which is a good enough reason to proceed with the mission. As they continued reading over the sheet, both Tsunade and Jiraiya couldn't believe what they were reading came from their sensei. Sensei, you're willing to offer that much of our own financial resources in exchange for one girl? Jiraiya gawked. Take this from the someone who gambles often. You're putting a lot on the line here, Tsunade stated, although Hiruzen waved it off. 15% is hardly something to worry about. In fact, the council and I deduced that the sum was adequate enough, Hiruzen stated. Besides that, there are other contingencies that have been set into place. When did all of this decision-making take place? Jiraiya demanded as he wanted to know why both he and Tsunade were excluded from these discussions. The information was delivered by one of your informants directly to me at the end of the meeting. This entitled the council and I to extend the meeting in order to discuss what you've just learned, Sarutobi stated while going back to managing the necessary documents involving the issue. What if Kusa demands more than just the 15% increase in trade that you're offering? They aren't exactly known for their understanding, Tsunade asked, causing Sarutobi to give them a very serious look. The team was handpicked by both me and Danzo. Should the need arise, they will resort to the next backup plan that has been set for just the occasion, Hiruzen stated as his eyes grew colder. Are you planning to go to war for just one person? Jiraiya questioned his sensei's judgment. I am prepared to do whatever it takes to protect this village, and should the need arise, I will do what I think is necessary to carry out such tasks if it means the village will be safe, Hiruzen stated, catching both his students off guard since their sensei was being deadly serious. As Hokage, it is my duty to protect this village just as my predecessors before me. Jiraiya and Tsunade wanted to input their own opinions, but they knew that there was no chance that they would have been able to convince their sensei to change his mind. Hiruzen knew that his students didn't approve of his methods, but they needed to be done, and so he let out a small sigh. This responsibility is very heavy on the shoulders of the Hokage, you must understand. I'm not the only Hokage who has been in this office that has made a tough decision, Hiruzen reasoned. Jiraiya and Tsunade didn't respond, and so Hiruzen motioned to them that they could leave. Upon doing so, the two Sannin took their leave and returned to the Senju compound to look after Naruto. At the same time, the Umbu released the jutsu that kept the barrier up. Hiruzen's mind was heavy in thought with much of the details of yesterday's meeting and today's weighing heavily on the mind. Putting some documents aside for later, the third Hokage got up from his seat to look over his village from his office windows. The sun was beginning to set and some of the stars in the sky were beginning to become visible in the night sky. Senseis, Minato, please continue watching over us during these dark times, Hiruzen prayed to the deceased. Looking over his shoulder at the concealed box that was hidden from both Jiraiya and Tsunade's view next to his desk, Hiruzen's became even more serious. The box contained black folders that were wrapped together by red bindings with different symbols from many of the varying villages assorted on them. I fear that we will need all the help we can get if we're going to survive. Hiruzen looked back up at the darkening sky with grimace, with his eyes taking in the many stars becoming visible. When they come. The following morning came with an unpleasant start for Naruto as he awoke with a fright. Jiraiya had decided to get back at Naruto for a prank that he did to him a couple weeks back by sticking some vinegar into Naruto's nose. This in turn caused Naruto to wake up and demand answers from his godfather. What the hell was that for you, stupid Aro Sannin? Naruto demanded while Jiraiya just laughed at Naruto's plight. Consider that payback for what you did to me a couple weeks ago when you stuck onion juice up my nose, Jiraiya pointed out, even though Naruto was still fuming. Why I outed Naruto began before being grabbed by Jiraiya and tossed out into the Senju compound's courtyard before rushing at his godson. At the same time, Tsunade and Shizune were busy reading today's newspaper, which was just recently delivered. Tonton was resting on Tsunade's lap while the two were conversing on an article about something going on the land of Wave. The chat was cut short when Naruto was flung directly at Tsunade, who proceeded to catch the boy and set him down on the ground. I think that's enough playtime, Jiraiya. Naruto seems to be back to normal, Tsunade stated. Just making sure. After all, we don't want him to get hurt since today is the day we're going to get him caught up in chakra control and manipulation. Jiraiya replied as he walked over towards Naruto, who was still a little dizzy from Jiraiya flinging him at Tsunade. If he was able to move around this morning, then that means that he would be able to do such tasks regardless of making him dodge your attacks, Tsunade pointed out, causing Jiraiya to scratch his head sheepishly. With that out of the way, Jiraiya turned and faced Naruto, who has regained his senses and balance. Alright Naruto, now remember how we taught you to control your chakra. Jiraiya began as he wanted Naruto to remember those important lessons that were taught to him. We want you to do those exact same exercises right now so that we can see this chakra. Naruto, nodding in understanding, took a deep breath in before slowly releasing it as he relaxed and began to concentrate on the flow of his chakra. The feeling was of the tingly sort and shot out across Naruto's body. It was heavy as well, but at the same time almost non-existent. Feeling this source of power, Naruto began to try and manipulate it by using the methods that he was taught, unknowingly causing it to manifest for his godparents to see. The sudden appearance of the golden chakra surprised them as poor Tonton was startled half to death and ran for cover behind Shizune, who was also taken by surprise. Jiraiya took note of how the chakra sparked out and tore into the ground and surrounding walls, all while Naruto seemingly was unaware of the entire thing. This chakra is extremely dense for just a child such as Naruto to have. Something like this could only be expected from a Jinchuriki, Jiraiya noted to himself. Tsunade noticed how calm Naruto truly was and decided to try something. Picking up a single rock, which garnered Jiraiya's eye, she tossed it at high speeds towards Naruto, much to Jiraiya's surprise. Before he could even protest, though, the chakra struck out against the rock, turning it into dust. Just as I thought, nobody could remain that calm with all of that chakra tearing up the place, unless they aren't affected by the surrounding stimuli, Tsunade stated. What power! To think Naruto's chakra would be this powerful after lying dormant for so long, Jiraiya stated in disbelief. To turn a rock into dust with a single strike requires a great amount of power. The question is, how did his chakra become this way? Minato nor Kushina showed any signs of having similar chakra. Tsunade asked her old friend. Could it be something recessive? Jiraiya asked. I looked up the available information about both of their heritage and found nothing, Tsunade explained. Minato was a rare individual from a regular shinobi family who had no bloodline, while Kushina, though from the Uzumaki clan, only showed her ability to perform the usual adamant and chakra chains and the other usual Uzumaki bloodline traits. Perhaps it's a mutation that developed as an effect of 11 years ago, Jiraiya wondered aloud. Perhaps, and if that's the case, it would explain as to why he was unable to produce a single drop of chakra until now, Tsunade concluded. That still wouldn't explain why it is she didn't show any of the same traits. Tsunade, keep it quiet on that part. We don't know if he can still hear us, and it's best he doesn't learn about her, Jiraiya whispered to her, forcing her to cease thinking of the topic. Sorry. For now though, we should try and see if we can get him to stop. Tsunade apologized before they both tried moving up towards Naruto. As they did, they were nearly struck by Naruto's thrashing chakra. Well, it seems that's out of the question. Any ideas? Waiting is an option since we don't want to necessarily harm him, and his chakra is exceptionally dangerous. Besides, he should be stopping soon since we never specified how long we wanted him to do this, Jiraiya pointed out as they began to wait on Naruto, unaware that he was no longer conscious, but instead deep in his subconscious. Opening his eyes, Naruto instantly recognized that he was in his subconscious. I was just trying to practice my chakra control, and somehow I ended up inside of here, Naruto muttered to himself as he looked around before being nearly swept away by fierce winds as King Ghidorah flew overhead. Hey, watch it! Landing on top of a large mountain of stone, Ghidorah looked down at Naruto's tiny form and simply chuckled. You're nothing but an insect. Why should I be careful around you? Ghidorah mocked as he situated himself on top of the mountain. By the way, how do you like your chakra? Naruto was surprised by the fact that Ghidorah had just asked him a question about himself. I don't know. I only remember that time when I charged at Kiba, and everything after that is a blur, Naruto stated, causing Ghidorah to grin. And how do you know about chakra if you're from outer space? I can see the outside world by looking through your eyes, and I can hear things through your ears, Ghidorah answered, though he noticed Naruto was looking at him confused. Aside from that, I have other ways of finding out information that I won't tell you about. Naruto glared at the golden dragon skeptically. A chuckle was slowly forming in the middle head's throat. Naruto was questioning his response already. It seems as though you do have a brain to think with, Ghidorah bellowed in laughter at his host, causing Naruto to intensify his expression into a glare. As for your chakra, you should be thanking me because there was some kind of seal suppressing it. This alarmed Naruto almost immediately as he wanted to know where that came from and why it was restricting him from the beginning. How did that get there and how did you destroy it? Naruto immediately began asking, much to Ghidorah's annoyance. How would I know when it got placed there? I destroyed it, so that's that. As for how I blew it up, I used my powers to destroy it during your pathetic match against that mutt, Ghidorah answered before recomposing himself as he wasn't about to let Naruto get to him. Now listen to what I'm about to tell you, brat. This concerns your chakra and the reason it's like it is. Wait, what's wrong with my chakra? Naruto asked before receiving a bolt of electricity striking towards his side, startling him. Never interrupt me, kid, Ghidorah bluntly stated, although Naruto felt like it was more of an order. When I destroyed the seal that was placed over your chakra, I inadvertently caused your chakra to mutate upon using my gravity beam to do so. This has resulted in your chakra becoming dense and wild, and from what I have just heard from your guardians, it seems to rival that of those called Jinchuriki. Jinchuriki? Naruto repeated as he knew full well what a Jinchuriki was due to his godparents being Sannin. He remembers the stories he heard from them of how Jinchuriki contained a Biju within themselves. Power of human sacrifice. Is that what that means? How trivial. Those who have power should be grateful for it, and use it to make themselves respected and awed upon, Ghidorah retorted. Otherwise there'll be nothing but pieces of flesh for the starving beasts around them to gorge themselves over. If they did that, then they would be hated even more, Naruto began. Hatred forms from more hatred, a long never-ending cycle that will go on for generations to come. Peace is what everyone should strive for instead. I never said that you could go all philosophical in here, kid, and whoever told you that was right about hatred. However, peace is but an illusion that mortals dream of, only to be destroyed at the sight of conflict, Ghidorah explained. I have seen it many times while traveling the universe, and many times I was the cause of that conflict. You really are a cold-hearted monster, aren't you? Naruto exclaimed at Ghidorah, who snickered in response. Now you're complimenting me. First throwing idiotic philosophy down my throats, and now you trying to butter me up, Ghidorah mocked as he leaned downwards off the mountain. Too bad I'm hard to please. Bellowing out once more, Ghidorah reeled up back into a sitting position from atop the mountain he was currently perched on. Why is it that you really pulled me back here? Naruto demanded. You hardly seem like the type that would worry over someone else's well-being. You're right to think that way, because that is exactly what I'm like. However, since I have to stay in your body for unknown reasons, I'm merely looking after my own safety, Ghidorah stated. That chakra is deadly, and if you're not careful it will kill you, and then that will really piss me off. Wait, you're saying as a trade-off for the stronger chakra, I have to deal with the possibility of imminent death? Naruto exclaimed. This was not going well at all, and he was becoming terrified at the fact that the very source of power he had been trying to use for so long finally surfaces, only to be the cause for his own death should he not be careful. It's not imminent. Rather, there will always be that possibility so long as your body remains the way it is, Ghidorah clarified. If you don't want to die, then I suggest getting stronger. Your body will grow and adapt to this power. However, you must tread carefully from here on out. Then can you teach me how to prepare my body? Naruto asked Ghidorah, who quickly denied the request. As I stated before, you're too weak for me to consider training you in the slightest. Consider this a test, if you will, Ghidorah explained. If your body adapts to this new chakra and you become stronger, then I might consider you strong enough to train you. Otherwise you'll nothing more than a liability in the making. His words were harsh, and Ghidorah wanted them to be that way. There was no need for weakness in his vessel. If there was, then he would have to destroy it. Naruto just sent a glare towards the larger kaiju while all three of Ghidorah's heads looked down at him. Ghidorah looked into Naruto's eyes and saw the strength held within them. But as he looked deeper into them, there was fear. And that was all Ghidorah needed to see. Pulling his heads back up, Ghidorah charged up his power, causing the Naruto's mindscape to erupt into a thunderstorm with fierce howling winds. "You're still too weak. The next time you come back here, you had better be stronger," Ghidorah yelled as he flapped his wings, sending forth powerful hurricane winds directly at Naruto, forcing him into the air and out of his mindscape. "This will be the last time I pull him in too. Now then, where did I leave off while exploring this mind?" Looking around, Ghidorah quickly remembered and took to the air, heading towards the location. "Time to find out why I can't fully manipulate the boy the entire time I'm in here." Waking up from his subconscious, Naruto saw that both Jiraiya and Tsunade were standing directly in front of him. Confusion was taking effect as Naruto was wondering why they were standing closer to him when they were further back beforehand. "I told you it wouldn't take long. Only 10 minutes went by," Jiraiya told Tsunade, who waved Jiraiya aside while walking up to Naruto. "Well, we've concluded that it will take you quite some time to get used to your chakra, however. This just means that whatever jutsu you use in the future will be much more powerful." Tsunade started, making Naruto a little confused. "Why would they be more powerful?" Naruto asked. "Your chakra is naturally heavier and denser than a normal shinobi's. In fact, it's almost as dense as a Jinchuriki's chakra, while using their Biju," Tsunade explained to him. "So whatever techniques you learn in the future will be much more powerful, although harder to perform." Naruto quickly recalled what Ghidorah had explained to him about his chakra. "So, the density of the chakra determines the power behind the attack." Naruto thought before something else came to mind that he wanted to ask them. "Does that mean that I have to try harder than normal?" "Yes, it may be hard for you, but we'll be beside you all the way," Tsunade answered. "However, before we can do anything like learning jutsu, we need to teach you chakra control methods that will help you control that dense chakra of yours," Jiraiya stated as he expressed his input. "Now, since the density of your chakra is far greater than a normal shinobi, this will require a particular touch that I think will help you." "Okay, so these new chakra exercises, what exactly are they and how will they help me?" Naruto asked Jiraiya, who proceeded to fly through some hand signs before performing the summoning jutsu. The result was a puff of smoke appearing where Jiraiya's hand contacted the ground. Naruto had heard the stories of how his godparents were able to summon large summoning animals that they had contracts with, and how they were able to use them in battle against deadly adversaries. As the smoke lifted, a small green toad with white thick eyebrows, white hair in a mohawk-like manner, and a little small goatee appeared. "What is it, Jiraiya boy? I was just about to have me some of Ma's tasty cooking before you summoned me unannounced," the small toad asked while seemingly annoyed. "Sorry about that, but I wanted you to meet someone that will need your help," Jiraiya apologized before gesturing towards Naruto. The small toad in question looked over at the boy with analytical eyes as he quickly picked up on the family resemblance. "Is this Minato's son, Jiraiya boy?" the toad asked, resulting in Naruto wanting to ask him some questions about his father. "If so, then why is it that his chakra is extremely dense? You didn't put it inside of him, did you?" This caused Jiraiya to overreact as he attempted to silence the toad. "Put what in me?" Naruto asked them as he was starting to question what the toad was talking about. "And how does this toad know my dad?" "Naruto, this here is Fukasaku, a toad sage from Mount Mayaboku. He's going to help you with your chakra exercises while I'm away and Tsunade's busy at the hospital," Jiraiya explained, surprising both Naruto and Fukasaku. "Wait, you summoned me just to help train this kid in chakra exercises?" Fukasaku exclaimed before hopping up and bopping Jiraiya in the head, sending his face into the ground. Tsunade merely shook her head as she expected this kind of response from the toad sage, especially considering that this was a request coming out of the blue. "Holy crap, that grandpa toad just took down Ero Sanin," Naruto thought as he was a little terrified of this small toad called Fukasaku. Said small toad was busy yelling at Jiraiya, who wasn't able to defend himself, much like when he angers Tsunade. Tsunade decided to get Fukasaku's attention so that Jiraiya could explain the situation to him. "Lord Fukasaku, please excuse Jiraiya's rudeness, but the reasoning behind why he summoned you is rather important." Tsunade attempted to sway the small toad's favor. Looking over at the princess herself, Fukasaku hopped over to her, still annoyed. "Jiraiya made it pretty clear that he wants me, a great toad sage, to help him teach a child how to control chakra," Fukasaku started. It's embarrassing that the child I once taught years ago would need help with such a trivial problem as this. That may be true, however. Naruto here has chakra that is far denser than a normal shinobi should have unless they were a Jinchuriki. Tsunade explained, making the toad rather curious at the fact of the mention of Naruto's chakra. Denser, you say? Well, perhaps wait and oh. The small toad exclaimed. Jiraiya should still be able to teach him chakra control regardless of the density, and even you who has a rather pristine chakra control should have no problems with it. Pa, if you just let us show you the problem, then maybe you would understand our situation, Jiraiya offered as he picked himself up from the ground. Though the toad was annoyed, he wasn't unreasonable and would let them show him the problem. Fine, Jiraiya boy, however, this had better not be a waste of my time, otherwise Ma will have both of our heads, Fukasaku stated as Jiraiya walked up to Naruto, who had decided to remain quiet through most of the exchange. Alright Naruto, you're gonna have to show Pa over there your chakra, so that way he can understand what it is we need his help on, Jiraiya explained. Naruto was hesitant. He remembered Ghidorah's words of caution when using this chakra, which made him quite nervous. What if I can't manifest it like a few minutes ago? Naruto asked Jiraiya, who placed his hand on his shoulder but still had a smile on his face. Then you won't have a living godfather anymore, Jiraiya stated jokingly, although Naruto could see the small tell signs of fear spreading across Jiraiya's face. Looking over at Tsunade, she was also a little nervous, but Naruto didn't quite understand why, other than the fact that someone called Ma would have both Jiraiya's and the Grandpa Sage Toad's head. Looking further back, Naruto could see that Shizune and Tonton were hiding behind a fallen table, more than likely to avoid contact with the toad and to have it as a shield. Okay, I'll do it. Naruto reluctantly agreed, allowing Jiraiya to release a small sigh of relief. Jiraiya walked back over to Tsunade and Fukasaku before nodding to her to let her know that Naruto was going to do it. Alright, Naruto is getting ready, although we'll need to move back Pa, Jiraiya stated, causing a confused look to take place on the small toad's face. Deciding to humor him, Fukasaku hopped onto his shoulder as Jiraiya and Tsunade walked back a bit from Naruto. Naruto, you can start whenever you're ready. Feeling the pressure that was riding on this, Naruto was a little hesitant at first, not just because of his current situation, but also because he didn't want to re-enter his mindscape and get yelled at again by Ghidorah. I'm starting to see why Shikamaru considers everything troublesome, Naruto thought to himself as he took the same position he did last time to gather his chakra. Taking a deep breath, Naruto began to concentrate on the flow of his chakra. Fukasaku noted how the boy remained calm and noticed the position he was in. I see you've taught the boy the same meditative stance that I taught you long ago, Fukasaku pointed out, making Jiraiya grin. A rather risky decision if you ask me. He could have ended up gathering nature energy. Believe it or not, that was what I was hoping for in a way, Jiraiya stated, surprising Fukasaku, who hit him in the head again. What an irresponsible guardian. Do you want him to turn to stone? Fukasaku yelled at him. I only taught him the part for focusing his inner energies. I didn't explain senjutsu to him or anything, and the reason for that is because his chakra never surfaced until yesterday, Jiraiya mentioned. Come again? Fukasaku asked as he wanted some clarification of what he just heard. Naruto wasn't paying the group any mind as he was focusing on feeling his chakra and attempting to balance his energies. It didn't take long for the tingly feeling to surface again, although this time it wasn't as weird a feeling as it was before. Concentrating more on his chakra, Naruto delved deeper into the source until finally it erupted to life. Fukasaku and Jiraiya were in a heated argument when Naruto's chakra sparked to life, startling the old toad, who looked onward with wide eyes. Feeling the power shooting off Naruto, Fukasaku lost much of his composure upon registering the feeling that it was emitting. Jiraiya boy, how did you get that boy's chakra to contain nature energy? Fukasaku demanding, surprising Jiraiya and Tsunade. Come again? Naruto doesn't have nature energy in his chakra. Otherwise we would have sensed it beforehand, Tsunade stated, although seeing the small toad sage sweating profusely, as well as the expression he was barring, made her question otherwise. It's not enhancing his normal chakra like when either of you use senjutsu. That chakra is infused with nature energy, Fukasaku stated. This boy isn't turning to stone. His chakra is like lightning from a raging storm. Such power and ferocity can only be matched by nature itself. Jiraiya and Tsunade were speechless for a lack of better terms. Fukasaku watched as the chakra sparked and cracked around Naruto, encompassing him within its light. This child. To be able to do such a feat has been unheard of for over 1,000 years, Fukasaku thought as he took in the sight. Naruto was beginning to lose composure as he was starting to lose his control over his chakra. Eventually it became noticeable to the others when the visible golden chakra began to recede away seemingly back into Naruto, who upon release let out a heavy sigh and decided to take a rest. Tsunade was the first to respond to the change by making her way over to Naruto and checking him over. Finding nothing essentially wrong with the blonde academy student, she waved a sign to Jiraiya signaling that everything was okay. "So, Pa, what do you think?" Jiraiya asked the small toad who was still reeling back from what he just witnessed. "Jiraiya boy, I must head back to Mount Myaboku immediately and speak with the great toad sage about what just happened," Fukasaku stated as he prepared to reverse summon himself back to Mount Myaboku. Jiraiya was taken back as he wasn't expecting this kind of reaction. "Is everything okay, Pa?" Jiraiya questioned only to see Fukasaku shaking nervously. "What I just witnessed is something unnatural," Fukasaku began with a mutter. "A child born with such a gift has been unheard of since the time of the Sage of Six Paths, let alone that chakra was as fierce as a thunderstorm. I must speak with the great Toad Sage to learn what steps must be taken to ensure Naruto's future is secured." "What exactly do you mean by that?" Jiraiya was confused as Fukasaku wasn't explaining anything to him other than the fact that Naruto's chakra is infused with nature energy for some reason. Suddenly his mind was hit with a stunning conclusion that made Fukasaku's reactions justifiable. "Do you think that Naruto is the child of prophecy?" "That is what I intend to find out," Fukasaku stated. "I will return to Mount Myaboku first and speak with the great sage. Afterwards, regardless if the boy is the child of prophecy or not, I will assist in teaching him. A child being born with such a gift is but one chance in several generations and should be molded and taught to use that power for the better good." "Very well, I will tell Tsunade and we will await your return," Jiraiya replied as he watched Fukasaku reverse summon himself back to his homeland. Many thoughts were filling Jiraiya's mind, many of which he felt unprepared for. Turning to watch Naruto and Tsunade, who called over to Shizune to go and get some water for Naruto, Jiraiya didn't know what to expect from here on. If Naruto is the child of prophecy, then that means the other parts of the prophecy will begin to emerge. Finally snapping out of his stupor, Jiraiya made his way to the group to check on Naruto as well. He wasn't about to allow Minato's only son to drawn into something such as the prophecy without proper guidance. And he'll have to inform the third Hokage of his new decision. In the land of grass, a small shinobi village stood at the base of a massive grassland with hardly any trees to be seen. This village was called Kusagakure, the village hidden in the grass, and it was one of shrewdest shinobi villages in the elemental nations. Known for their diplomacy, the village tries to stay one step ahead of the crowd by analyzing the movements of the other countries around them. That and their analytical sense of studying other techniques from other villages has made it, along with its shinobi, hard to read. However, the village was completely unprepared for when two teams of shinobi from Konoha arrived at their gates. The guards on hand were suspicious since many of the shinobi wore white masks hiding their faces from view. One of the guards on duty walked over to the group to begin the procedures necessary to enter the village. "That's far enough, Konohanin. We'll need to see your identifications and necessary documentation before you are allowed to enter our village," the guard explained as a Konoha shinobi with spiky silver hair and a mask covering the lower parts of his face walked up to him. "We have an important message that needs to be delivered to the Kusakage," the silver-haired shinobi explained as he showed the guard a sealed document with the Hokage's seal. "It's important that we deliver it to him immediately, and we ask that you please let us in quickly." The guard saw the seal and recognized it from among the many seals any guard on duty would need to recognize. It was genuine. More importantly, it was the Hokage's seal with the kanji for dragon underneath its indentation signifying importance. The guard quickly moved aside and allowed the group to enter, while the fellow guards were completely perplexed. "Hey, why did you let them enter without checking their IDs?" the fellow guard demanded. The seal on the document was the Hokage's with the kanji for dragon embedded underneath it. The guard replied a little shaky, causing many of the other guards' eyes to widen. "The very same seal that is only used before war breaks out." "You don't think this has something to do with those folders that one of the other guards saw that were on their way to the Kusakage, do you?" a guard whispered to the others. "You know, the black and red ones with the assorted village symbols won them. Something tells me the peace and quiet won't last much longer," another of the guards stated as they watched the group of Konoha shinobi disappear from their viewpoints. Said group of shinobi were currently making their way to the center of the village where they were to meet with its Kage. Kakashi, do you think that the Kyuzakage will understand the reasoning behind this exchange? One of the masked umbu following the silver-spiked-haired shinobi. Let's hope so, Tenzo. Otherwise we'll have to resort to the backup plans that have been set into place. Kakashi replied to his colleague. This message should put some sway of the negotiations in our favor, although the rest will but up to us. The group continued onwards before they noticed the building they were looking for came into view. There is the hospital that was mentioned in the reports. 3 and 4 should be preparing right about now. Tenzo mentioned quietly. Let's hope it doesn't come down to having them move in. Yash, I'd prefer it if it was just us involved personally. A loud voice sounded. The others turned to face a man in a green jumpsuit with a Jonin flak jacket. He was wearing orange sweatbands on his legs, and black hair done in a bowl cut. The additional members of this mission are not the sort I'd prefer working with. You can say that again. A man with short black spiky hair and a beard stated as he lit another cigarette. I'm sure that we are enough to handle this mission. For once I find myself agreeing with Guy and Asuma. This mission may be important, but Root shouldn't be involved. A woman with long black untamed hair reaching her upper back and red eyes with an addition ring in them agreed. This mission requires a certain touch those mindless brutes aren't capable of. To be fair, Kurenai, Danzo told them to ensure the girl's safety above all else, so they will take her well-being into consideration, Tenzo mentioned. Surprising that the heartless bastard would say such words. Kurenai spat. That warhawk is only concerned about the girl because she is important to the village, and he'll think of her as nothing but another tool. The other members of the party heading to the Kyuzakage decided to remain quiet, mostly as to not get riled up with the other Jonin, and because they were on the job and it wouldn't look well for Konoha if its umbu complained about some of the heads of interior. Turning another corner, their destination was clearly in their view now. It was 3 stories tall, however. It wasn't as large or glamorous as the Hokage Tower back in Konoha. The design was simple and yet elegant at the same time. The building had the kanji for grass on it, and it was there that their mission would truly begin. We have a few days to negotiate and head back to the village. Normally this type of mission would take about 2 weeks in order for everything to be done properly. However, we don't have that sort of time and the Hokage needs us back as well. Kakashi stated to the group. Let's just hope this doesn't actually lead to a war. The heavy burden that the group had to carry with them to this village was about to reach its destination, although many of them were all wondering whether the negotiations would succeed or fail. Hoping for the former rather than the latter, the group picked up the pace a little as they had a very important message that needed to be read. Chapter 4. New Challenges. The representatives of the Hokage from Konoha made their way into the main government building in the middle of Kyuzakage. Only 2 were allowed entrance, Kakashi and Tenzo, while the others had to wait outside until the meeting was over in order to learn how the negotiations went. For Kakashi and Tenzo, they were both keeping their wits about them, as they knew full well that the Kyuzakage was someone that should never be underestimated. Kyuzakage was an information hub for any and all information across the elemental nations, especially pertaining to their bordering neighbors. This was a result of the Third Shinobi War, when the land Kusa resided in was turned into a battleground and resulted in it becoming subjected to the terrors of war. The shinobi of Kusa are considerable diplomats as they carry an uncanny sense of analysis for both politics and shinobi techniques that has allowed them to remain one step ahead of the other nations around it. This meant that Kakashi and Tenzo were about to be in the presence of a shinobi, whom is considered the best in his village of shrewd analytics. With that in mind, they made their way to their destination. Upon arriving at the door to the Kyuzakage's office, the secretary knocked on the door before checking with the Kyuzakage to see if he was ready for them or not. Once given the go-ahead, the secretary moved out of the way and motioned the 2 Konoha shinobi into the office. As the 2 entered the office, they took note of how the office was sparsely decorated with decor, leaving much of the room to appear plain. At the back of the office was a panel of windows that would allow the Kyuzakage to look out at his village and observe from afar. There were no pictures of any past Kyuzakages, which was another difference when compared to the Hokage office back in Konoha. They took note of how organized and spotless everything was, including the desk, which even back in Konoha was something of an oddity as they expected to see papers or assorted documents on the surface of it. Sitting at the desk in a brown leather chair was a middle-aged man around the same age as Kakashi and Tenzo, with the traditional Kyuzakage garments that had hints of light green on it and his hat that was laid down right beside where his hands were resting on his desk. He had short brown hair that was slightly unruly with green eyes and a scar across the right side of his face. His expression was blank, as to be expected, not betraying his thoughts in the slightest. Tenzo was glad that he was still wearing his umbu mask, but he knew he needed to keep composed because the Kyuzakage is expected to be able to read an individual's body language. Kakashi had similar thoughts as he also kept himself composed and made sure to keep a sense of calm about him. "Come forward. I'm not going to kill you or anything." The Kyuzakage motioned the two over with his hands. The two did as they were asked and were awaiting for the Kyuzakage to speak first. "It's not every day that I get visitors from one of the big five, especially shinobi. It's an honor to meet you, Lord Kyuzakage. My name is Kakashi Hatake and this is Tenzo," Kakashi introduced. "Yes, the son of the infamous White Fang and the forbidden experiment created in a tube. I am already well in death with whom is standing in front of me," the Kyuzakage stated, unnerving both men at the fact that he knew who they were, specifically Tenzo. "Come now, it shouldn't be a surprise that I know of his past, Kakashi. After all, this is Kyuzagakure, where we make it our business to know everything." Kakashi and Tenzo remained silent as they watched the Kyuzakage pull out a file from one of his desk drawers before placing it out in front of him and closing the drawer. Opening the file, the Kyuzakage took out the documents and sorted them to his own accord. Once he was finished doing that, he held up a document and began looking over the details once more. "I trust that you two are aware of the confines that these documents hold, correct?" the Kyuzakage asked nonchalantly while never looking away from the document. "Yes, all of us that were sent out onto this mission were fully informed of the information prior to setting out from the village," Kakashi answered. "This way this exchange could go by quicker and easier for both parties, as you are a very busy man." "Indeed I am. Running my village is my top priority, and anything that takes me away from my work prolongs the development and prosperity of my village," the Kyuzakage replied bluntly. Both Kakashi and Tenzo slowly began to realize that they were facing a man whom was far more than they were expecting. The suddenness of this request is very unlike the Konoha of the past, but not entirely so since it did make our nation a battleground. "My Lord Kyuzakage, we apologized long ago and even funneled in funds and assisted in reconstruction. Surely you must realize that we weren't the ones who intentionally wanted that war," Kakashi expressed. "You must have known that it was a Wagakure that infiltrated your homeland in order to strike at our borders. We were only trying to repel them during the Third Shinobi World War. Do not forget that I was alive during that time, Sharingan Kakashi, and believe me when I say that I hold more of a grudge to IWA than Konoha. As for what I meant was the sudden surge of shinobi sent over into our lands combating against IWA and ignoring the safety of my people, many of whom were slaughtered in the conflict for supporting Konoha," the Kyuzakage mentioned while temporarily setting his gaze on Kakashi before returning to the document. "However, I also remember the aid Konoha sent. It helped my family and others, but for many others it was too late for them." An unsteady silence set amongst the people in the room. None of them were speaking, only observing. The Kyuzakage let out an annoyed sigh before placing the document back down upon his desk and sitting back into his chair, resting his head on his hand with his arm prompted up on the arm of his chair. His posture exclaimed boredom, but his facial expression displayed neutrality. A sense of confusion and unfamiliarity settled into Kakashi and Tenzo's minds. "The exchange will not happen," the Kyuzakage stated abruptly, ending the enduring silence of the room. "What?" Tenzo accidentally stuttered out loud. "Need I say it again? The exchange will not happen," the Kyuzakage repeated with a little annoyance evident in his voice. Tenzo was confused as to why the Kyuzakage was refusing such a beneficial deal in exchange for seemingly nothing. Kakashi, though, remained stoic as he began calculating exactly what he would need to say within the next few moments. "Does something within the deal unsatisfied you, Lord Kyuzakage?" Kakashi asked, gaining the attention of the Kyuzakage away from Tenzo. "May we hear what the reasons are so that we may appropriate changes to the deal?" This caused the Kyuzakage to subtly raise an eyebrow as though not expecting such a response. "Do you have the authority to change the deal at will, Kakashi?" the Kyuzakage asked of him. "Yes, it was stated by the Hokage that we are allowed to change the deal within certain parameters that would better support the transition of this deal," Kakashi explained. The Kyuzakage then straightened himself up in his seat as he pulled up a specific document from the many on his desk. "This girl is very important to your village, isn't she?" the Kyuzakage asked, driving the conversation into a new direction, but a move that Kakashi knew would happen eventually. "Yes, she was a relative of one of our late shinobi, whose will was recently discovered that entitles her to an estate, and one of the wishes that was contained in the will was that she would be returned to Konoha to live where her family once did. Kakashi explained in detail. Interesting. When did this shinobi die and why did it take so long for the will to be found? The Kusakage questioned in an analytical way. Kakashi though remained strong as he thought back to the example that he knew of personally for ideas. She passed away about 11 years ago this past October, and as for her, well, you may recall the little incident our village had at that time and how we were still finding dead 2 weeks afterwards, not to mention the loss of valuables and displacement of personal property. Kakashi began. Someone had originally mistaken one of her dressers for their own, and not long ago realized that there was a board in one of the drawers that was hiding the will. Upon discovery, they turned it into the Civil Service Department. And why was it that I did not receive any official documentation of this will? Surely if this was the case, then the Civil Service Department would have sent along documents to prove this accusation. The Kusakage pointed out, causing Kakashi to flinch slightly. Damn, this man is shrewd. Kakashi was doing decent up until now, but how will he fare now? Tenzo thought as he looked over slightly to his companion and noticed that blank expression Kakashi had. That to anyone else meant nothing. But Tenzo knew that Kakashi was bested and currently lost. Kakashi! Tenzo was now more worried than prior to taking this mission. This guy is really starting to push it. Kakashi noted while keeping his expressionless mask on to make it harder for him to be figured out. This guy is clever, as to be expected, asking questions that are continually pressing down onto the receiver, trying to crush them and make them practically putty in their hands. However, that won't work here, not since Lord Third gave me the one phrase that can turn this around. Come now, Kakashi explained to me why it was that the documentation was not in order. The Kusakage urged. Tenzo was growing slightly concerned that Kakashi didn't know how to respond. He hadn't given any clear sign of change from the same stoic expression since his flinch. Kakashi finally broke his stupor. Much to Tenzo's immediate relief, however, the main concern of whether or not Kakashi still had an excuse or not was still pressing onto his mind. Well, there is a reason for that, however. I was not entirely informed as to the reason for the documents not being organized and sent to you on the account that our Hokage is having to focus on many black binders with red bindings. Kakashi answered quickly, receiving a flash of understanding from the Kusakage as to what Kakashi was referring to. I apologize for not stating it first, but I'm not well informed in this matter. None of us who were sent out on this mission were. We only know that the administration is seemingly in frenzy for unknown causes and is trying to restrain itself. I see. The Kusakage started to remove himself from his prone posture, as the mentioning the binders seemed to have caused the man before them to tense up, and both Kakashi and Tenzo noticed that the man was trying to restrain himself in front of them. In light of that information reaching me now, I can see why the documents wouldn't have been sent along with the sudden notice. We do apologize for that. The notice itself was made in a hurry, and was only able to get passed on after Lord Third happened upon a conversation between two administrators. Kakashi explained to the Kusakage. The Kusakage, seemingly understanding the situation in Konoha, knew about the hardships one would have with their administration during such times. However, there was still something that needed to be said. I can sympathize with Konoha's administration, however. I will not work liars sent to get whatever their Kage wants. Kakashi and Tenzo tensed up as they weren't expecting anything after such a response prior to this. What are you referring to, Lord Kusakage? Are you implying that we, the envoys of the current third Hokage, are Kakashi began before being cut off by the Kusakage. Lying. Yes, you are. Honestly, who do you think I am? The Kusakage mentioned, causing both Konoha shinobi to curse silently. Mixing lies with truth is an easy way to make something sound convincing, and in any other case you would have gotten me. However, as Kusakage, I am made aware of every single move a shinobi makes in the elemental nations, and the recent death of your Jinchuriki has caused Konoha to search outward for potential candidates to host the Kyubi. Both Kakashi and Tenzo were flabbergasted at the sudden statement that was just thrown at them, and questions began to forage in their heads as to how such delicate information that was supposed to be covered up by Jiraiya personally be discovered at all. The Kusakage, though, was getting far more annoyed than before as he looked at the two. I hate repeating myself. It should be of no surprise that I would know this information. Honestly, were you implying that we are a bunch of armatures over here? You would be foolish to think so. The Kusakage exerted as he applied slight force into his words to ensure that the message was clear. To think that Kusagakure has enough skill and resources that they would be able to obtain information that only a select group even know about and is protected by Jiraiya's spy network. This is a threat to any and all national security if anyone is able to obtain even this classified information, let alone any of our troop movements or our village's current number of shinobi in the village at a given time. Tenzo thought as he came to realization of the threat that was in front of him. Kakashi was adamant in his decision-making, not really sure of what he should do next. Kakashi decided to just keep going. Lord Kuzakage, such information shouldn't be available to you, considering the group of people who know this information and the individuals keeping it from surfacing. Kakashi stated. If you want to know, we weren't planning on selling it or anything, just keeping it handy as we waited to see if you were going to come over our way for our Uzumaki to make her the next Kyuubi Jinchuriki. The Kuzakage mentioned as he leaned back into his chair and crossing his arms. It's always important to have your cards in order when it comes to dealing, but of course Konoha sends in someone who can meet our demands in exchange for the girl, something that was foreseen. You can't imply that you expected us to show up all this time? Tenzo spoke aloud, causing the Kuzakage to do something that was the first during the whole time they were there. He smirked, but he didn't just smirk, he was grinning from ear to ear as he chuckled at their plight. Honestly, it wasn't hard to deduce that you would come here. You need an Uzumaki first and foremost, and I have one, but of course you could have found one somewhere else. But considering they're near extinct, it's safe to say that there are only a handful left with that useless boy in your village and the girl in mine. The Kuzakage boasted, causing both Kakashi and Tenzo to send daggers at the man for his comment on Naruto. Careful now, you wouldn't want to cause an international incident that could jeopardize everything that your village has been working so hard to achieve. Both Kakashi and Tenzo were really starting to despise this man as they realized just what kind of person he truly was. So, it seems that there are snakes in the grass after all, Kakashi retorted. Please, spare me any of your banter. As a Kage, I have to put my village before everything else, and in this case I'm going to exploit this whole event to my favor, and you can't afford to say no. The Kuzakage chuckled. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. You don't know what you're doing, do you? If you anger our village, you know full well what would happen to you. Tenzo exclaimed at the man. Oh, what's the old monkey going to do? Sick that old hawk at me? They're nothing more than old sacks of flesh that are good for nothing but wasting air. The Kuzakage replied. This angered both shinobi as they respected their Hokage, not so much Danzo, but nobody disrespects their leader. Then pray tell, what would your demands be if, say, we were to continue these trade discussions? Kakashi asked, wanting to know what exactly they had in mind from the very beginning. If we were to exchange the girl, then we would be losing out on a powerful bloodline, one that could help make us stronger, so if we're going to exchange her, we must receive something of equal value in exchange. The Kuzakage stated, making both shinobi realize what it was they were after the whole time. In exchange for the girl, you must hand over either a Hyuga or one of the surviving Uchiha clan members, otherwise this deal will be considered void. All you leaders are the same, wanting bloodlines in order to make yourselves stronger. It makes me sick, Tenzo abruptly stated as his emotions were starting to get the better of him. He was about to make a move on the Kuzakage just for that alone, but Kakashi brought his arm out in order to stop him from doing anything of the sort. I'm afraid such demands are not in our best interest, Kuzakage. Having to separate a member of either clan from their families is a rather painful sight to see, and could emotional damage the person if not treated properly. Kakashi countered. A true statement, yes, but here at Kuzagakure we would ensure that they would live a comfortable life in exchange for establishing a clan here in our village. The Kuzakage explained. You would deny them active role in your military? Kakashi questioned. Considering that one of those clans was just recently a victim of a failed genocide resulting in nearly 3/4 of it being wiped out in a single night and the other suppressing half of its clan members, I'd say that it wouldn't matter, considering they would be far safer here and be allowed to do as they pleased. The Kuzakage countered back. Do you even see them as human beings? Tenzo demanded. Well, you see the girl as a tool for your own means of war and protection, so I see anyone with a bloodline the same way. The Kuzakage responded back, with the last part stinging both Kakashi and Tenzo. Honestly, everyone knows that Jinchuriki are nothing more than tools created so that they could be used for the preservation of the elemental nations. In essence, they're no longer human once they have that demon placed inside of them. Kakashi was reaching the limit of his diplomatic skills. He had tried everything that he learned from his sensei, and even the suggestions that Sarutobi gave him. Faced with the difficult task in front of him, a heavy feeling of dread spread itself across Kakashi's being as he looked at the man in front of him, blocking his way to freeing the girl and taking her back to Konoha, where she would have a better chance at a peaceful life so long as her status isn't revealed. Even then, the info could be leaked by Danzo, however. She wouldn't be the only Uzumaki either. Considering Naruto, he would be thrilled to meet her and at the very least try to become friends with her. Thinking about it some more, he realized that she would more than likely be protected at all times by Umbu in the background and Tsunade and Jiraiya in the foreground. Kakashi knew full well what the life of a Jinchuriki is like, considering the stories he heard about Kushina in her past, and how his sensei was always there to help her and make her happy when she was down. The same could very easily happen, but so long as people are there for her, then maybe. I think this game has gone on long enough. Either meet our demands or leave. I have other things to do today and you're just wasting my time, the Kyuzakage stated aloud. Kakashi, reflecting on his passing thoughts, was fueled with new ambition that became evident in his posture and gaze, something the Kyuzakage noticed. Indeed, this game has gone on long enough, and now you're going to agree to the exchange presented to you, Kakashi declared with force, causing the Kyuzakage to scowl out of spite. You dare to order me? I hold all the cards here, Kakashi? Or did you forget that? The Kyuzakage exclaimed. Tenzo looked over at his companion and noticed the look of determination that was evident in his lone eye. The same look he saw when they were confronted by Root long ago. Kakashi began reaching into his back pouch while never removing his gaze from the Kyuzakage as he remembered the last words that his Hokage gave him before leaving for this mission. Kakashi, I fear that even if you try your hardest to convince the Kyuzakage into accepting the deal, he still might not take it, Sarutobi mentioned to Kakashi, who was standing in front of his desk getting the last amount of details before meeting up with his assigned team for the mission. What do you mean, Lord Hokage? Surely I should be able to persuade the Kyuzakage into accepting the deal. Kakashi tried convincing his leader. A man such as him may be shrewd, but I have Sensei's teachings at my disposal, as well as your guidance and authority in these dealings. That might not be enough this time, Kakashi. The Kyuzakage is the best shinobi that Kusugakure has created. He is cunning and terribly shrewd. He will drive the conversation to places that would be meant to corner you, and he will push you until you'll submit to his demands, Sarutobi stated. Because of this, I can only see him wanting something of equal exchange for the young girl. You don't mean that he would demand someone from one of the clans just for her, do you? Kakashi asked for clarification, to which Sarutobi gave a sad nod. Yes, it would be well in his character to make such a demand in this case, which is why I will give you something that will ensure that he will follow the exchange that was sent prior ahead of the team's formation. Sarutobi explained to Kakashi as he opened up one of his bottom drawer and pulled out a medium-sized box before placing it onto his desk. Lord Hokage, what exactly are you giving me? Kakashi asked as his concern began to grow as the third Hokage's face began to darken as he unlatched the box and began to open it as to reveal the contents within to Kakashi. Pulling out a cloth-covered object from his pouch, Kakashi began to remove the cloth off to reveal 2 scrolls of differing colored frames, bindings and seals. Kakashi made his way over towards the desk of the Kyuzakage, whom was confused as to what Kakashi was bringing before him with such a confident, yet slightly remorseful presence. Just to let you know, Kakashi began as he stopped in front of the Kyuzakage. This could have been avoided. With that, Kakashi placed the 2 scrolls next to each other with the seals facing the Kyuzakage for him to see them and the terror that enshrouded them. The Kyuzakage's heart nearly skipped a beat as he looked down at the 2 scrolls laying before him on his desk. 2 law-confining documents that bared a seal of a different Kage. The one on his left was a scroll with black bindings with a red frame and the Hokage's seal present on it. The other also had black bindings, but it differed in that it had a dark green frame with the seal of the Kazekage on it. The man was not looking at the signature seals, however, but the kanji imprinted below the 2 of them. Both of them carried a deathly aura about them that made his stomach sick as fear began to take grip over him. The mark of damnation was upon both of them, the very same mark that above all things meant absolute death, the kanji for Oni, the declaration of war. Lord Kyuzakage, it saddens us that we weren't able to make a deal work, but we must go now for we have to get ready now. Kakashi began as he motioned for Tenzo that they were going to be leaving. Don't worry, we'll be back soon though, and maybe then, when facing 2 large shinobi forces, you will consider making a deal with us. Kakashi began to make his way out with Tenzo, but was stopped by the Kyuzakage, who yelled out to them. Wait, please take these back with you, he cried out. I cannot accept these. If I do, it will mean certain death for my village and the end of our nation. Kakashi just turned and glared at the man who was slowly but rapidly beginning to break down before him in Tenzo. It's as you said, Lord Kyuzakage. No more games from here on out, it's all or nothing. Kakashi replied, causing the man to falter and leap out of his seat and run around the desk to grab both Kakashi and Tenzo as to stop them from leaving. No, you mustn't leave, he yelled out in terror. If you leave, then war is declared, and I will be forced to accept both declarations. The man yelled. He was breaking, and Kakashi and Tenzo watched as the man held onto both of their wrists with all his might so that they couldn't leave his office. Lord Kuzakage, you are aware of the dangers you are placing yourself in by holding both messengers in your village, correct? Kakashi asked with a dark tone. Because you do know that if we do not leave regardless of the declarations being accepted or not, war will still happen. The Kuzakage immediately looked at his hands and nearly shrieked in fear as he quickly released the two of his grip before falling to the floor. Kakashi and Tenzo were now making their way over to the door. They were almost to it when the Kuzakage yelled out to them once more. Wait! I accept the prior exchange for the girl. There is no need for war. The Kuzakage cried out, causing both of them to stop in their place and turn to look at the broken man in front of them. I accept the exchange of an increase in trade of up to 15%, the joint economic financial plan that would increase Kusagakure economy by 15%, and new jutsu being delivered quarterly for the next 3 years. Kakashi waved Tenzo to go ahead and go to inform the others that they were finished here, while he stayed and walked over to the now broken Kuzakage. Lord Kuzakage, you are an amazing politician. Certainly one of the best Kusagakure has created in the past decades. Please get up. It is unbecoming of a Kage to be on the floor facing a foreign shinobi in his own hold. Kakashi stated as he pulled the Kuzakage up onto his feet and back into his chair around his desk. Even though the man was broken now, Kakashi still knew that the man was still prideful, and ending on such a note would have ruined him. Something the third Hokage knew about prior to sending a team to retrieve Karen. You helped me up even after I practically gave you an ultimatum and demanded outrageous claims from you in exchange for the girl? The Kuzakage questioned as he didn't believe the past few seconds even happened. Politics is an evil game, Lord Kuzakage. You should know that better than anyone else. You were made to believe that you had all the cards in place. Lord Third was right to create this plan, because now you have no choice but to listen to what I say, and that shouldn't have had to happen. Kakashi explained. Here you are, a leader of a fine shinobi village, breaking down before a shinobi of another land and being played around like an instrument. Lord Kuzakage, you must understand the situation better than I, considering that Lord Third was hoping that by merely mentioning the binders that you would be reminded of the importance of this exchange. I might not know everything that happens in an administration, but my former sensei was Hokage, and I know firsthand the kind of pressure running a village can have. Kakashi let those words sit in the Kuzakage's head for a few seconds before going back around the desk to stand in his previous spot in front of the Kuzakage. The man, now trying to repair himself, sat in his chair thinking hard at what Kakashi had said, and shame became evident on the Kuzakage's face. I remember the time when my family was attacked by IWA shinobi. They had gotten a lead that we had assisted a group of Konoha shinobi by giving them shelter and food. They rounded us up along with other families that had done similar things and took us to an open field where they were going to execute us. The Kuzakage took a pause as Kakashi could only guess that not everything that he and Tenzo were told in the beginning was entirely true. All of the men were gathered up and were the first to be murdered by them. They wanted to torture us with this execution, which was why they took away our pillars of strength that protected us. Then they gathered all of the women, and they did horrible things to them before killing them, though as they took time to relish in their vices. Many were killed in the process. Finally, it came down to the children, who were now orphaned and scarred for life at the images before them. One by one, they began to kill us off before only a few us remained. They were initially going to let us go as a warning, but they were growing tired of doing that, and so they decided to kill us all off. It was in that moment I knew that I was going to die, that I was going to tortured and killed for the enjoyment of monsters. Tears were evident coming down the Kuzakage's face as Kakashi had a hard time watching the man explain his past to him. To him, it was torture. The funny thing is, though, was that fate was only kind to us few that had made it up to that point, as Konoha shinobi stormed the field and stopped the IWA shinobi from killing the rest of us off. The fighting was quick and merciless, with none of the IWA shinobi standing and only us survivors and the group of Konoha shinobi left alive in that bloody field. Many of the Konoha shinobi recognized us survivors and soon realized why we were targeted, and they helped, treated our wounds while also taking care of our dead friends and relatives by burying them in marked graves. Out of all the shinobi that were there, however, only 2 stuck out. The Kuzakage stated as Kakashi got drawn in for some reason. One of them was a jonin with blonde spiky hair and blue eyes, and the other was a young chunin that had gravity-defying white hair and a stoic expression. Both of them found me and assisted me, helped me by carrying me to one of the secured towns being protected by garrisoned Konoha forces, and saw to it that I was given immediate medical attention. It was because of them that I'm here today, and now I have besmirched their kindness with my own selfish desires. As true as your statement is, you were looking after the only family that you had, your village, so in a sense you are not entirely faulted. Kakashi expressed. Besides, I believe one of them said that you should always keep your head up and keep looking forward and never forget the love that your family had for you. The Kyuzakage remained quiet as Kakashi removed the 2 scrolls from the Kyuzakage's desk and placed them back into his pouch. You may take her. There will be no need for the deal, the Kyuzakage stated, getting Kakashi's attention once more. As leader of Kyuzugakure, I am responsible for the safety and well-being of my people. Today I am reminded of the dangers that will present themselves. In accordance with my actions, I have caused enough problems for my village and nearly endangered it with war. As a leader I have failed, and as to make amends I will just let you have Karen for you to take back to your village. Kakashi was silent as he bowed in acknowledgement and made his way out of the Kyuzakage's office. But before he was entirely out, the Kyuzakage made sure that he heard his one and final request. The next time you visit your sensei, tell him I said thank you and that I will learn to be a great person just as his student was. The Kyuzakage asked before turning around in his chair to look out at his village, allowing Kakashi to leave, although this time with a sense of renewal on both parts. The village bristled as the seasonal winds blew through, carrying the sense of spring through the air. With it came the warmth of the sun that bathed the world in its luminous gaze, filling the world with life. It was due to these natural occurrences that village was alive and prospering with a well-functioning economy and a strong military. The village was able to thrive and culture was allowed to develop and grow. It has been only a few days since Naruto's chakra had emerged, and yet he was starting to make excellent progress. Every afternoon Fukasaku would be summoned and help in assisting in Naruto's development. The first major concern that both the old toad and the Sannin had was that due to Naruto's unique chakra composition that chakra control would be impossible with Senjutsu. However, that was starting to not be the case. Naruto had begun to learn how to control his chakra more effectively, as was evident when he managed to run up a tree and making it all the way to the top before losing traction, resulting in him tumbling down and being caught by the old toad. It was a sign that their efforts were paying off, and Naruto overall was improving considerably. In the academy he was now on equal par with many of clan heirs and has even closed the gap between himself and Sasuke. This, however, was not entirely unforeseen, as prior to not having chakra, Naruto had already learned the course material from Jiraiya and Tsunade, which elevated him into the higher level of education, as evident with his test scores. And since he never had access to chakra, his taijutsu was all he had to defend himself with, so it was refined thanks to Jiraiya. But since chakra never flowed about his body, he couldn't muster up the strength to compete with any of the clan heirs. His ninjutsu skills were still low and his genjutsu skills hardly existed, however. Considering his rapid development since his chakra manifested and under the guidance of proper instructors, Naruto was starting to become a prodigy in his own right. To Naruto, he was just glad that he finally had chakra to call his own. Currently Naruto was finishing up the last bit of training for the day with Fukasaku before the old toad would have to leave for dinner. So what is it like on MT Mayaboku? Naruto asked the toad as he continued to lifting the object that was in his hands. Ah, a paradise for us toads, where lily pads are numerous and delectable delicacies are practically flying about through the air. Fukasaku explained, although he wouldn't know it, but he had just given Naruto the wrong idea, as Naruto envisioned toads on lily pads watching ramen fly throughout the air. Perhaps one day when you've mastered your chakra and become a fine shinobi, I'll take you there to train you in the same arts as that fool of a pervert that is your godfather. Wait, you're saying that I could one day become a sage just like Ero Sannin? Naruto asked with a hint of glee in his eyes. This got the old toad chuckling, as he hadn't seen such admiration since Jiraiya first stumbled onto MT Mayaboku long ago. Technically speaking, yes, however, you have great potential. Naruto, for your chakra is a storm that can only be rivaled by your determination. You could become a sage of MT Mayaboku if you wanted, but opportunities will open up in the future that might be more promising for you. So keep that in mind. Fukasaku explained as he received a puzzling look, in response to which the old toad merely shrugged off and made a comment about youth and eventual understanding. I think that this will be a good stopping point for you, Naruto. We can carry on tomorrow where we left off, so you can put it down now. Naruto did as the old toad said and put down a stone statue of a toad that was brought over from MT Mayaboku by Fukasaku. It wasn't quite as large as the other ones he found around, but it was twice Naruto's height and weighed in close to a ton. Your chakra gives you strength. That fierce storm inside of you will require much more to break it. But the fact that you've managed to lift that statue up and down repeatedly for close to 10 minutes is a large step to mastering your chakra. Fukasaku acknowledged, allowing Naruto to feel proud of his success. Due to your rapid advancement, we will double the amount of training tomorrow, and we will push for half an hour tomorrow. That made Naruto suddenly regret putting in the extra effort on the side, as he began to reflect on much that had happened this past week alone. His thoughts drifted back and forth between the changes that he was facing as he is now being forced to stay at the compound again under Tsunade's watch. Although she couldn't get time off of the hospital to supervise Naruto's training with Fukasaku, so instead she managed to let Shizune get off earlier than before, so that she could be there when she could not. Naruto looked over across the large yard of the main compound and saw Shizune and Tonton waiting on the sidelines. Shizune was currently catching up on the news by reading the Konoha Digest while Tonton was resting on the pillow next to her. "Naruto, is something bothering you?" Fukasaku asked, regaining Naruto's attention. "You seem to have spaced out there for a minute." "Oh, yeah, it was nothing, I was just thinking about something was all," Naruto answered with his usual happy-go-lucky grin, though Fukasaku could see through the mask quite easily. "Come now, boy, you honestly expect me to fall for that? Need I remind you that I was the one that taught Jiraiya practically everything he currently knows?" Fukasaku pressed as Naruto thought on what he said, and a couple thoughts came to mind that made him give the toad a skeptical look. "What?" "Arrow toad," Naruto stated, causing Fukasaku to gawk before jumping up and whack him across the head. "Ouch, what was that for?" "Listen carefully, Naruto. I'm gonna get something straight with you before this becomes a thing. I didn't teach Jiraiya until after he was like that. In fact, he had the audacity to ask if the chameleon summon Senjutsu could help him camouflage himself in order to enter hot springs," Fukasaku retorted. "If anyone is to blame, it should be that man sitting in the Oval Office, because he was Jiraiya's first instructor, and as such the one whom imprinted the most into what he's become today." Naruto, for his part, thought about something in his head that came to mind after hearing what Fukasaku said. He remembered a time when he was with Jiraiya and he was handing a book to Sarutobi, the third Hokage, who was flabbergasted that he would do such an exchange in front of him when he was so young. A look of disgust and shame spread itself across Naruto's face as he quickly realized what it was that he had experienced long ago and just how far the image he held of the third Hokage had fallen because of it. "So many perverts are living in this village, it's almost as though this is a hub for them or something," Naruto remarked under his breath, although Fukasaku heard clearly and chuckled. "That may be true, however, this village is full of other types of people. Many that resent those like your godfather and other that could care less. A village consists of many different people with varying views and opinions, so make sure you remember that if you still want to be Hokage one day," Fukasaku stated, and getting an understanding nod from Naruto in response, acknowledging the usefulness of it. "Now I believe that will be it for today. I can't keep Ma waiting forever now. Take care, Naruto boy. I will see you again tomorrow." With that, Fukasaku disappeared in a cloud of smoke from his reverse summon back to Mt. Mayaboku. Naruto remained in his spot though for a few moments as he reflected on his progress and the words that Fukasaku gave him before leaving. Naruto let out a tiring sigh of relief as he stretched a little, gaining Shizune's attention as she had looked to see the puff of smoke from Fukasaku's reverse summon. "Are you done for the day, Naruto?" Shizune asked, getting Naruto's attention. "Oh yeah, the old geezer toad just left, although his training just keeps getting harder," Naruto moaned as his body was still burning from the exercises he did today. "I have managed to get further into channeling my chakra, but during that last exercise my chest was burning, and I felt like I was going to throw up at the end." Shizune, not one to take risks, sat the paper down on one of the arms of the chair she was sitting in and got up to make her way over towards Naruto. As she began making her way over towards Naruto, Naruto began to feel odd. His vision was slowly beginning to blur and the burning sensation in his chest was returning. Within a few moments though, his body seemed to lock up as he stumbled over, just barely retaining consciousness. This alarmed Shizune as she quickly, along with Tonton, raced over to the prone figure of Naruto. "Naruto!" Shizune yelled as she quickly began to see if he was still conscious, and much to her nerves, she was thankful to see that he was still aware and responsive. "Hang on, I'm going to examine you real quick." She quickly began to check him over and found the anomaly quickly, and shock was evident on her face before masking it, and quickly began treating Naruto before turning to Tonton. "Tonton, quickly fetch Tsunade, it's an emergency." Not long following that, Naruto slowly fell into unconsciousness, becoming unaware of everything around him. Off and on he would slip in and out of consciousness, but altogether it seemed that time passed each time he regained and lost consciousness. Before long he remained unconscious as he drifted into sleep. Several hours had gone by and Naruto was none the wiser about what had transpired throughout that time, only knowing the emptiness he was feeling and the urge to sleep. Outside though, Naruto was unaware that he was currently being placed in a bed in the compound by Shizune, while still being checked over by Tsunade. They were in Naruto's room, which was dimly lit so to not disturb Naruto, especially after the whole ordeal that he was experiencing. Leaning against the frame of the open window he was sitting in, Jiraiya watched from afar while Tsunade and Shizune treated Naruto. Jiraiya had in his hands the papers that they got from their hospital trip prior that evening, which he had been looking over before placing them into his coat pocket. It seems that he was lucky this time, Tsunade commented before removing her hand from Naruto's chest. The illuminating green hue of her healing jutsu dimmed out of existence as her hand parted from Naruto's body. I fear that these attacks might become more frequent, Jiraiya. This was the third one since he began training. A terrible side effect of that chakra, no doubt. It would have been different if his chakra coils developed in accordance to support that power within him as he grew, however, that isn't the case here. Jiraiya stated as he watched Naruto being cared for by both Tsunade and Shizune. Tonton was right next to Naruto the whole time, oinking softly, hoping to try and soothe him of any pain that he might feel with her soft sounds. His chakra is as heavy as a Jinchuriki's, and what's worse is that it can damage his nerve endings of his nervous system. We managed to repair most of them, but a couple of them will need to be healed over time in order for them to return back to normal, Tsunade mentioned as she placed her hand back onto Naruto's chest in comforting manner as she watched his haggard breathing slowly return back to normal. He nearly had a stroke today, Jiraiya. Tomorrow he could have a heart attack. We need to lessen his amount of training, otherwise he could become fully paralyzed at the very least. I know, Tsunade, but he is so determined to get stronger now that he has his chakra after so long. Now we might be forced into limiting him in what he can and cannot do. He already doesn't like being back in the compound. Jiraiya replied remorsefully. He wants to pass his own parents and become something that he can feel proud of. Please, Jiraiya, inform Lord Fukasaku about this. He cannot proceed into these severe training regimens without knowing about Naruto's condition. It was foolish of us to not inform him when happened the very first time, Tsunade stated while never moving her gaze from Naruto. I guess we don't have any choice now, and I think that it would be best to also inform Sensei. If we want Naruto to get stronger, both will need to know the hazards he will be facing, Jiraiya admitted as he exited out of the window and began to walk away from the room. Lady Tsunade, should I inform the academy that Naruto will not be able to attend tomorrow, just to make sure that he gets the extra rest? Shizune asked as Tsunade let out a soft sigh before nodding her head. Naruto will more than likely not wake until tomorrow afternoon. Until then, we need to make sure that the academy understands this, Tsunade stated before getting up along with Shizune. Shizune, I'll need you to stay with him tomorrow and ensure that he is comfortable, while I try and look into ways that could possibly help prevent this from happening as frequently. Getting a nod of acknowledgement, Tsunade began exiting the room before turning back around to look back at the sleeping form of Naruto. Next to his prone form was Tonton, whom was keen on staying by his side throughout the night. Looking over at the little pig, Tsunade formed a sad smile as she watched the scene. And you make sure you watch over Naruto, okay? Tsunade stated to Pig, who turned and snorted in understanding before turning her attention back to Naruto. The two women made their way out of Naruto's room and separated as they went to their own respective rooms within the compound. Before long, any remaining lights within the compound were turned off, leaving it shrouded in darkness. Outside the main compound, Jiraiya was making his way towards the Hokage's office when he stopped to make sure that the two women had gone to sleep. After waiting for a couple minutes, Jiraiya watched as the last bit of light was extinguished, allowing for him to do what he needed to get done. You can come out. I know that you're there, Ghost, Jiraiya implied as he waited for seemingly somebody to appear. The wait was not long, however, as a familiar sound filled the nearby area as a spectral figure emerged cloaked in black. The figure was rather tall, but that was all that could be seen at first glance. The clothing the figure wore prevented any indication of whom this person was. Even their face was covered by a single solid black mask with two eye holes for the individual to see out of, though no one could see inside of them. The figure remained where it stood, not moving in the slightest as it stared directly at Jiraiya, who was unfazed by the seemingly dead gaze directed at him. Jiraiya, for his part, was rather serious, but not seemingly on the defensive nor the offensive. For him, Jiraiya was standing there waiting for a reply from the being, but not to his surprise, he didn't receive one. Silent as ever, Ghost. You know, for someone who's been watching over Naruto his entire life, you're an oddity considering you hardly speak, Jiraiya stated, although the figure didn't change in the slightest, causing Jiraiya to sigh in annoyance before attempting to strike a conversation from the reserved individual. Look, I'd like to thank you for appearing again and transporting Naruto to the hospital rather quickly. It was thanks to you that everyone there was able to prevent a stroke or worse from occurring. The figure continued to remain prone, to which caused Jiraiya to visibly twitch in annoyance. You know it's rude to not respond to somebody who is trying to thank you for saving another's life. Jiraiya retorted. Funny coming from the guy who's always trying to peep on women while they're bathing at the hot springs. Ghost replied back, causing Jiraiya to jump in surprise. Come now, Jiraiya. Did you really think that I couldn't talk? Well, considering past encounters, I'd say my response is justified. Jiraiya answered as he watched Ghost disappear before his eyes. Touring at the new source of chakra next to him, Jiraiya quickly turned to see Ghost balancing himself on top of a lamp post that stood near the gate, squatting and looking down at Jiraiya. Also, you need to quit doing that, it's rather creepy. On the contrary, what I do is intended so that other individuals are unaware of my presence while I follow and keep a close eye on Naruto. Ghost replied. Yeah, well, he's currently resting, and so that means you don't have to keep that up all the time. Jiraiya remarked, only to get a slight chuckle from the obvious other male that was looking down at him. Look, I'm going to be leaving the compound to go speak with Sensei. I don't want to come back and hear that Naruto was abducted under your watch. You hear me? The only response Jiraiya got was a sudden coldness that filled the air as though death itself was nearby. Do not worry, Jiraiya. Danzo has failed many times prior to today in trying to get his hands on Naruto. Ghost began as Jiraiya noticed that Ghost was pulling something out from underneath his cloak, and yet no one has ever set foot onto these grounds. Ghost then tossed a round object over towards Jiraiya, whom caught it and was quick to identify it. The object in his hands was a plain white mask with the kanji for root on it. Jiraiya also noticed the blood stain that was across the mask, and yet upon examining the grounds around the compound, there wasn't a sign of a battle present that Jiraiya could find. I see that you're still quite skilled. A shame that I still don't know your name, only the name you took on when you began your solemn watch. Jiraiya mentioned as he pocketed the mask into coat for later. He began to continue on his path to the Hokage Tower as he headed to the gate to which Ghost was waiting at, still perched on top of the same lamp post. He continued forward until he was in whispering range near Ghost, when he stopped for a brief second. Make sure that no one gets close enough to him until he's able to defend himself properly. I don't trust Danzo, not since the failed Uchiha massacre. Jiraiya whispered to Ghost, whom neither responded nor showed any signs of acknowledgement. Also, we can't have Naruto getting another episode when he eventually becomes a shinobi, hopefully though he can get past this, but if not. Ghost didn't respond as he knew what Jiraiya was intending to say. Jiraiya continued his way over to the Hokage Tower as he exited through the Senju gates, not looking back to see Ghost disappear into thin air. This is important, I just hope he knows that. Jiraiya thought before jumping into the air and landing on a nearby roof in order for him to get to the tower quicker by jumping across the building tops instead of through the streets. At the same time, a group was just returning from a mission and was making its way towards the Hokage Tower as well. Their intentions were different than Jiraiya's, however. The importance was just the same, as the news he carried would be as necessary for the third Hokage. This group was escorting a very important person who was about to start her new life in Konoha and was unaware of the future that she would have here and the difference it would be when compared to her stay in Kusagakure. Two different lives affected by the events of their past converge on each other, unaware of the plan that was in store for them. As the heavens gleamed and the earth watched onward, the stars danced around these two lost souls to guide them in the dark. With new challenges ahead, one could only guess the outcome these two would reach. Chapter 5: Understanding. Light dimmed across the village as the morning sun continued its crescendo through the early morning. Its rays of warmth stretched across the entirety of the village little by little until the entire village knew of its presence. The light was shone bright enough as it breached into the dimly lit room where Naruto was residing. The new source of light did little to increase the lighting of the room, due in part to the blinds and curtains that were covering the windows. However, it was effective in disrupting the sleep of one of the individuals in the room at that time. Stirring from their sleep, red eyes were revealed to the lightly lit room. Shielding them with one of his arms, Naruto let out a tired sigh as he waited for his eyes to adjust. He felt stiff, more than likely because of the way he slept, and tried sitting up only to feel slight discomfort from his chest and upper torso. Well, I think I overdid the training a bit yesterday. Naruto began as he sat himself up. I must have passed out again. Oh well, I guess I'll have to be more cautious with my training. Naruto began stretching his arms in front of himself as to relieve his joints when he finally took notice of an unknown weight resting on his side. Looking over at the weight next to him, Naruto noticed Tonton resting on one of her pillows underneath a spare blanket. Naruto smiled softly at the little pig, as he could only guess that she wanted to make sure that he was okay. I must have worried you quite a bit, huh, Tonton? Naruto smiled at the little pig. He carefully moved her pillow as to not disturb her, so that he might be able to stretch his legs and get some breakfast. As he got up though, Naruto felt his whole body was transitioning from a state of stiffness to normalcy. A weird feeling considering that it was already the next day. When did I pass out? Because there is no way that I should be this stiff with perhaps 14 hours worth of sleep. And that's considering I passed out in the evening? Naruto thought as he slowly managed to get up onto his feet. Maybe it has something to do with all of that training that I've been undergoing this past week, or maybe... Naruto's thoughts drifted off as the sound of his stomach grumbling and the sense of hunger quickly began to register in the blonde's mind. Questions for later, I guess. Naruto stated as he began to make his way out of his room and towards the kitchen to get himself something to eat. Once out of the room, he turned right and began making his way down a hallway for a few meters before turning into another hallway. Within a couple of moments after turning onto the new hallway, Naruto entered a room on his left, which was the kitchen. Heading over to the kitchen pantry, Naruto grabbed a box of cereal and made his way over towards the large cooler that contained the milk. Upon opening the door to walk into it, Naruto's senses were quickly regained upon impact with the cold air coming out of the cooler. Well, I guess if I wasn't awake earlier, I am now, Naruto commented. Walking into it, Naruto scanned the right side of the cooler, primarily a row of shelves lining the walls of the cooler with assorted dairy products lining the different shelves. After a few seconds, Naruto found the milk, which was stationed next to the whipped cream, and grabbed it as he made his way out of the cooler. Once he exited the cooler, he made sure the door was closed before heading over to one of the kitchen cabinets to grab a bowl for his cereal. Within a few minutes, Naruto had made and eaten his breakfast as well as put up the milk and cereal box. Placing his bowl next to the sink, Naruto stretched once more to try and alleviate some of the stress on his joints. However, it wasn't working. This sucks. My legs are still way too stiff and I keep having to pop my back. Naruto sighed. Looking over at a clock on the wall in the kitchen, Naruto saw that it was only 20 minutes after 5, which meant that he still had plenty of time before he would have to be at the academy at 8 for his first class. Well, I could go for a walk for a little while before heading over there. With that said, Naruto returned to his room and quietly grabbed some spare clothes and went over to the hallway bathroom that was closest to his room to take a shower and change. As soon as he finished, he went over to the laundry room and placed his dirty clothes in his hamper and made his way to the front door, where he slipped on his sandals and made his way outside. As that was happening, back in Naruto's room, the blanket that was covering up a pillow was beginning to stir. The sudden lack of spare warmth began to cause the small pig sleeping under it to shift around before finally removing the blanket off of her. Tauntaun was not a morning pig, and one could easily tell, especially with a tired and annoyed look on her face. Upon waking up, Tauntaun stretched her body before letting out a soft yawn and looking over as the empty bed beside her. A couple moments passed by before her tired mind began to process the sudden change and alarm became apparent. Looking across the room, Tauntaun noticed that Naruto was nowhere to be seen, which raised the state of alarm the little pig was experiencing. Frantically, Tauntaun raced out of the bedroom with a seemingly smoky trail behind her as she raced around the compound to find Naruto. As this happened, the sudden ruckus coming from the compound awoke Shizune, who was trying to sleep in a little bit considering that she was given the day off. The constant oinking and rambunctious noise was preventing that from happening, however, forcing Shizune to get out of bed and investigate. I wonder what has Tauntaun in such an uppity this morning. Perhaps Tsunade forgot to set out her food this morning. Shizune yawned as she began making her way out of her room into the hallway outside. Before she could even set one foot out of the door, however, Shizune was attacked by Tauntaun, forcing her onto the ground with the little pig on top of her, whom was hell-bent on getting her attention. What the heck is wrong with you this morning, Tauntaun? The little pig began oinking and grunting repeatedly as to try and communicate with her. Before long, Tauntaun leapt off of her and started making her way towards Naruto's room before stopping and calling out to Shizune as though to follow. What is it, Tauntaun? You're hardly this excited in the morning. Shizune yawned before deciding to follow the pig. Tauntaun turned around after seeing that Shizune was going to follow and began heading off towards Naruto's room. Shizune, still in a morning stupor, didn't even notice where she was being led. However, after walking for about a minute, Shizune found herself standing outside of Naruto's room. I already tended to him this morning, Tauntaun. That's why he doesn't have a cloth over his head. She sighed before following the little pig into the room. Upon entering, her tired mind slowly began to register the confines within it. The room was still dimly lit by the small amount of light breaching through the blinds on the windows of the room, making it a little hard trying to make everything out at first. After a few moments of slow processing, Shizun began to realize the most crucial amount of detail that was missing in the room. Naruto. "Where's Naruto?" Shizun practically screamed, which was loud enough to awaken a slumbering figure on the roof of the compound. "Taunton, start sniffing him out. We have to find him and make sure he's okay." Upon receiving the command, Taunton jumped forth and began sniffing the sheets on Naruto's bed to memorize the scent. Before long, Taunton shot forth past Shizun and into the hallway, with Shizun following right behind the small pig. And now, aware of the situation, another was beginning their own search for the young blonde as well. Walking down the streets of Konoha, Naruto was trying to stretch his legs while taking a walk. Looking around, Naruto noticed that he wasn't the only one up and early this morning, as he saw quite a few people already up and about doing their daily routine. He took note of the shinobi swapping shifts guarding the gates as well as standard patrol. To everyone in the village, it was a routine aspect, as they knew full well why the patrol was there to begin with. Those don't look like the same guys that usually patrol the village, Naruto noted as he kept on walking around the village. They must be short-handed or something. It really wasn't any of his business, which was why he continued onward towards the center of the village. Unknown to him was the sudden shadow following him wherever he went. Walking for another 10 minutes, Naruto found himself in front of his favorite ramen stand, Ichiraku's Ramen, owned by none other than Mr. Ichiraku himself, and operated by both himself and his daughter Ayam. Naruto, much to his own stomach's argument, would like nothing else but to go in and grab a bowl to eat, but he knew that the stand wasn't open yet and decided that after the academy that he would go there first thing to catch up with the two. Continuing on, Naruto began getting lost in thought as he began to reflect on his progression over the past week, including his last conversation that he had with Ghidorah. Already Naruto had noticed that any attempt at confronting or conversing with the massive dragon was seemingly impossible at the moment. Whether that was due to Ghidorah not wishing to speak to him or something else entirely was already beyond Naruto's own knowledge. Though he didn't have anything really to spark a conversation over, considering the last time Ghidorah spoke to him, it was only a warning about him having to watch what he did from now on due to the properties of his chakra. Another thing that was supplementing itself within Naruto's mind was that in order to meet with the dragon again, he needed to become stronger, and considering his current progress, Naruto had to admit that even though he was strong, he knew that was weak. Having such powerful chakra that allows for me to do such awesome things, like lifting those big stones, is awesome, but there is a cost to it, Naruto thought as he held up his hand and remembered the numbing feeling that was left after lifting the first boulder earlier this week. On the plus side, I have strength to back me up if I'm ever in a pinch now. Considering the amount of effort going into his training, Naruto was hoping that a solution for his chakra's harmful effects would have been discovered by now, but that was due to him wanting access to learning more about the power that Ghidorah had. His own power that's infused into my chakra alone is powerful. I can only imagine the types of techniques that he could teach me. Naruto chuckled to himself as his curiosity was starting to pique ever more. He said he could destroy planets. If that's so, I want to be that strong. Then there would be no way anyone could beat me, allowing me to protect the village and become a Hokage unlike the previous ones. As Naruto continued his walk, his thoughts were disrupted by the sudden sound of a snicker. Naruto stopped in place as a scowl set itself on his face. Looking over his shoulder ever slightly, he noticed the shadow that had been seemingly following him this entire time. Deciding to continue forward, Naruto made a turn around the corner, forcing the individual following him to dash forward in order to keep up. However, as they looked around the corner to see if Naruto was still there, they were surprised to see that he had seemingly disappeared, seemingly out of thin air. The individuals silently cursing themselves for not keeping up with their target. Their thoughts were cut short upon registering the pain from a blow to their head. Quickly reaching up to rub the spot of contact, they turned around only to see Naruto standing behind them. "You idiot, did you think I wouldn't notice you following me?" Naruto yelled down onto the person. After doing so, Naruto quickly realized the individual was 2/3 his height. Upon closer analysis, he also noticed that the person before him was wearing a scarf that was much larger in comparison to what his body should have been supporting. The person that had been following him seemed to be some random kid, the likes that he had never met before. "So, you did notice me. The rumors of your prowess weren't all lies after all," the kid stated with joy, taking Naruto a little off guard that rumors were already starting to bring forth weirdos. "Huh, it's barely been a week, and yet I'm already being sought out. It would have been cooler if it wasn't a kid," Naruto thought to himself as he watched the little kid finish rubbing his head and shifted in place as excitement began to show in the faint twinkle of his eyes. "Teach me your skills by making me your disciple." The kid asked, catching Naruto off guard. You've got to teach me how to become stronger. Looking down at the kid, Naruto didn't know what to make of this scene before him. Sure, he may have improved a lot recently in terms of results at the academy, more so than what many considered in a week, but he still needed to improve his control over his chakra, and taking on a student seemed like the last thing on his mind to do. Real quick question first. Naruto began getting the attention of the small kid before him. Why do you want me to teach you when there are people out there like Sasuke Uchiha? That's just it. I don't want to be taught by someone like him. They won't know how to help me improve since they don't understand me. The child explained, causing Naruto to raise a brow. You're just like me. Your dad was the 4th Hokage and my grandfather is the 3rd Hokage. This got Naruto staring wide-eyed as he didn't even realize who was standing before him. I thought he looked familiar, Naruto thought to himself as he took in the words the kid was speaking. My name is Konohamaru. My grandfather named me after the village. But even though everyone in the village knows that's what I am called, no one ever calls me by that. Konohamaru introduced as he explained his reasoning to Naruto. It's always just honorable grandson. No one ever sees me for who I am, just who I'm related to, and I hate it. Naruto didn't say anything. He just thought back to himself, and sure enough, he began to see himself in this Konohamaru kid before him. Now it makes sense. That's why he's come to me for help instead of somebody else. He wanted it to be somebody that he could rely on. Naruto reflected. Konohamaru looked on at Naruto, waiting for any kind of response from Naruto. The person in question, however, hadn't changed much since his explanation began. Naruto stared downwards at Konohamaru with analytical eyes that didn't betray his thoughts, leaving Konohamaru only speculating on what it was that Naruto would do next. With a heavy sigh, Naruto relaxed his posture as he crossed his arms and gave Konohamaru a slightly annoyed look. Look, Konohamaru. Before I say anything, I want you to tell me your goals, Naruto stated, leading to Konohamaru to give a confused facial response. Tell what you plan on doing when you become a shinobi. Basically, what is your dream? My dream is to become Hokage. That way everyone will see me for who I really am, and that will be real soon, Konohamaru declared, not faulting in declaration towards Naruto, whom with his part was silent for the first few seconds. No way. Who would ever respect a Hokage like you? Naruto replied with a bland expression, causing Konohamaru to falter. Huh, what do you mean? Konohamaru yelled back. The title is too big of a name for such a little guy like you. Naruto began getting a what? As a response from Konohamaru. You idiot. It won't be easy to reach the title of Hokage. You don't get it just because you really want it. If you really want it, then dash. Then what? Konohamaru interjected, stopping Naruto in the middle of his small speech. You'll have to get past me first. Naruto finished with a devilish grin, causing Konohamaru to falter in place. In the background, a new figure had finally spotted the two together after searching for such a long time. Up on the roof of a nearby building, a man was seen looking down at the two below. Ah, finally I found the honorable grandson. And with the son of the late 4th of all people, interesting, the man stated. He was an average height for a grown man, wearing dark clothing which consisted of a black shirt, pair of pants, a bandana held up by his headband, shinobi sandals, and sunglasses. The man was named Ebisu, and he was the private tutor for young Konohamaru, chosen to help guide him into becoming a confident and dutiful shinobi. Previously this morning, he had lost sight of Konohamaru after waking the young child up for early practice in kunai and shuriken tossing. One moment he had only left him for a moment to set up the testing dummies, and the small scamp managed to evade him. Ebisu had been worried sick trying to find all morning, but was glad that he was at least safe. He began making his way towards the two, but was stopped upon an unsettling feeling filled the air around him. Ebisu hadn't noticed it before, but he quickly realized that he wasn't the only one watching the small exchange between the two children. Looking towards the source of the feeling on his left, Ghost was seen standing in place, not moving a muscle, with his gaze set onto the kids. Easy there. Don't give away our position. Wouldn't want to ruin their moment, Ghost expressed. The coldness of his voice sent chills up Ebisu's spine. He had heard that Naruto was watched at all times by a single shinobi, but he had never expected it to be someone like the one standing directly beside him. So, you're the one tasked with protecting young Naruto? Ebisu asked as he attempted to breaking the ice, since he figured they might be here until the two below them were finished. I wasn't tasked to do anything. I just do it because I want to do it, Ghost corrected with a swift coldness that caused Ebisu to sweat drop slightly in response, as he didn't know how to speak with this person beside him. I see. Ebisu whispered to himself as he looked back down. So, how is it watching over Naruto? Ghost moved around a little as he adjusted himself in a stance that would be more comfortable while watching over his charge. Difficult? You? Ghost asked back, to which Ebisu gave the same answer, leading the two to slowly converse until the exchange below was done. Back on the ground, Naruto and Konohamaru began to walk away into one of the side streets as to avoid any early morning traffic on the main roads. The two continued on talking, or rather Konohamaru demanding answers from Naruto, whom was busy smirking to himself before stopping in place. Look, Konohamaru, as of right now I'm not looking for a disciple. However, if you come back after I become a shinobi worthy of teaching, then you can try again, Naruto stated to Konohamaru, who was now red in the face with embarrassment and anger. What? After all that, you're not even going to accept me as a student? Why? Konohamaru yelled aloud. All I want is a name that everyone will respect, and I want it now. You of all people should know what it's dash. A swift blow to the head was enough to interrupt Konohamaru in the middle of his banter, while rubbing his head. You think wanting it is all it takes? Dream on, Naruto berated as he now stood fully in front of Konohamaru, abruptly overtowering him. You're talking about taking the position of Hokage. That's the greatest shinobi in the village, the one everyone respects. My whole life I've been in the shadows of all the great people involved in my life. My parents, my godparents, and even my name. There has only been a handful of people that I've met that don't see me as a shadow. Naruto continued. Are you ready to take the commitment? Commitment? Konohamaru questioned as he wasn't following what Naruto was asking. Everybody, and I do mean everybody, has the highest respect for the Hokage, so do you get it? Naruto asked once more before turning away from Konohamaru. There are no shortcuts. Konohamaru was left speechless at the sudden realization that Naruto had exchanged him. He thought back to what Naruto had stated earlier and was only now realizing what it was he meant. It angered him to think that something like the title of the Hokage was something that anyone could get. However, I'm not going to be your disciple anymore, Konohamaru cried out. From this day onward, we will be rivals competing for the title of Hokage. Heh, it's your tough luck. I'm already one step ahead of you in terms that in a year I will be graduating from the academy and be on my way to becoming a powerful shinobi, Naruto boasted, causing Konohamaru to seethe in understanding at the situation between the two. However, one day we might just fight for the title of Hokage, so you'd better look forward to that day, Konohamaru, because on that day I plan on becoming Hokage. With that said, Naruto began walking on his own away from Konohamaru, when a thought sprung itself into his mind. Turning back around towards Konohamaru, Naruto donned on an annoyed look. How the heck did you know where I was? Actually, why were you following me so early in the morning? Naruto demanded, getting a sheepish look as a response. Actually, I've been trying to find you for a couple days now. Each time I went to look for you at your home, a lady with black hair kept on saying that you were unavailable. And the one time I snuck into the compound to look for you, I somehow just ended up back in front of the gates to the compound, Konohamaru explained. Why didn't you come ask me while I was on the way to or from the academy then? Naruto asked. Because for the past 2 days you weren't at the academy, so I couldn't find you and ask you then, Konohamaru stated. What are you talking about? I was at the academy yesterday, you could have asked me then, Naruto stated, getting a confused look from Konohamaru. Well, I waited before and after the academy, and not once did I see you enter or exit from the academy at all, Konohamaru explained. I even asked some of your classmates, and they said that you hadn't been there for 2 days like I said. Naruto began thinking back on his stiffness. Slowly but surely the realization crept forth, and Naruto fully understood what had happened after his initial collapse during his training. Son of a dash, Naruto quickly began heading back to the compound without saying a word to Konohamaru. Hey, wait a minute, where are you going? Konohamaru asked aloud. To go find out if my suspicions are true, Naruto answered as he speed up his pace. Noticing that the two were now separating, Ghost disappeared without a trace, leaving only Ebisu standing in the same spot as before. You know what? I'm really starting to hate that guy, Ebisu commented before jumping down and begin his exchange with Konohamaru. All right, honorable grandson, it's time to return to your studies. Ebisu? Konohamaru jumped with a fright. How did you find me? Please, honorable grandson, I was handpicked to discipline that you may one day become a proper Hokage. As such, I have the abilities to find you should you decide to slip away from my sight, Ebisu explained. Then why is it so easy to slip away from you without you noticing? Konohamaru asked with a dead stare. I was busy taking care of the necessary procedures so that we could be sure can practice when you decided to up and leave. I'm not a sensory type, I'll have you know. Ebisu answered before grabbing Konohamaru leapt away back to the training area that they were in early this morning. Hurrying his way back to the compound, Naruto, running at decent rate, wanted to get some much-needed answers. Okay, so apparently, I must have been unconscious a lot longer than I originally thought, which is really annoying. Naruto thought as he took a right down an alleyway as to avoid some of the now early traffic. This is really annoying, because all I want to do is get stronger, but it's looking like I still can't do anything without something happening to me. Naruto dashed out of the alley across a semi-crowded street, weaving through the people and into another alley that was directly across from the previous one. What's worse is that by going too far I'll end up passing out for a couple days if not worse. This sucks. Naruto groaned while running around some discarded boxes and junk that usually find their way into these kinds of alleys. Upon making a turn that would take him to another street, Naruto found himself colliding with something. Whatever it was, a whimper of pain came from it, surprising Naruto as he held his head as the pain was still registering. Opening one of his eyes, the first and only thing that he could make out was the color red. That's weird. Why am I only seeing red? Am I bleeding? Naruto first began to think as his vision began to clear and the ringing in ears subsided as he became fully self-aware of what he had just crashed into. In front of him, laying on the ground, was a girl, around his age with red hair and wearing glasses that showed her red eyes. Rubbing her back as she looked up at Naruto with scornful eyes, she was about to let him have it. Watch where you're going. She yelled at him as she began to pick herself up when she noticed Naruto's hand being offered to her. Sorry about that. I was in kind of a hurry, and I didn't notice you when I turned the corner. Naruto apologized as he waited to see if she would take his hand, but found she didn't. She dusted herself off and made her way past Naruto, ignoring him. This of course not only bothered Naruto, but it also ticked him off as he was apologizing to her and she just brushed him off. Hey, I was trying to apologize to you by offering to help you up. Yeah. Well, I don't need your help, she yelled back at him. Naruto, being the stubborn fool that he was fully prepared to get the last word now that she was going to be like that. You know what? Fine. I'm not sorry for knocking you down then, Naruto yelled back as he watched her turn the same corner that he had just turned himself before letting out a soft groan as he began making his way back to original destination, while the girl slowly made her way deeper into the alley where she was met with the sight of men in white masks appearing out of nowhere. Surprising her, let out a slight scream before one of them apprehended her, causing her to try and escape his grasp. Where do you think you're going? You're not supposed to be outside. The one holding her scolded her as he continued to restrain her. Let me go, she screamed at him, but he refused to budge. Preparing to leave with her, finally caught the masked shinobi were oblivious to something moving in the shadows, but it became known once the one restraining her was struck in the head by a punch, causing him to flinch. The others sprang into action, but ceased upon recognizing who it was that was trying to stop them. Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing? Naruto demanded as he moved in front of the girl, creating a protective barrier between her and her attackers. They remained quiet for a few seconds as they had thought that Naruto was supposed to be recovering. I asked you a question. The girl that you are currently protecting from us is supposed to be seeing the Hokage right now, but she slipped out of her guardian's care, forcing us to find her. One of them explained, causing Naruto turn to look at the girl, who didn't seem too keen in going with the masked shinobi. Now then, Naruto-sama, please allow us to take the girl to the Hokage and we'll take you back to the compound. Turning back around to look at the group once more, but the group now felt something rather sinister. Naruto's eyes darkened to a bloody red and the air around them seemed to drop in temperature as Naruto glared back at them. Glaring up at the Umbu that stood before him, Naruto was preparing to do something crazy, much to the displeasure of Ghost, who was watching from the shadows. The Umbu, seeing that Naruto was standing his ground against them, figured that the next course of action was necessary. Before Naruto could notice, he was apprehended along with the girl by an Umbu agent each. Taken by complete surprise, Naruto resisted against the one holding him, while said agent was seemingly given a run for his money. Calm down already, Naruto. We're not here to harm anyone, the agent explained to him, but Naruto didn't care to listen to them. Instead, a slight spark was visibly seen in the field of vision of the agent, before he was seemingly shocked by some unknown source forcing him to release Naruto. The others, confused as to what happened, attempted to subdue Naruto but were met with the same results. Examining him closely, a slight shimmer of electricity was visibly seen sparking off Naruto, who charged at the one holding the girl. Attempting to kick Naruto away, the Umbu was instead surprised when he felt a sudden jolt of pain resonate throughout his body as Naruto suddenly appeared beside him with his fist embedded in his side. Along with the pain and shock from Naruto, he released the girl unwillingly, and Naruto pulled her towards him before he pulled out a round object from his pocket. "Close your eyes," Naruto instructed as he threw the object onto the ground, creating a pink cloud that shrouded him and her. The Umbu, being subjected to Naruto's tricks once more, were about to pursue when they noticed that their eyes and throats were burning. "What the hell?" one of them cried out. "Damn that Naruto. He tossed a cherry bomb coated in some kind of coughing agent." Another yelled while Ghost couldn't help but shake his head and sigh as he left them to go and continue his watch over Naruto. Further away from the Umbu, Naruto was still dragging the girl along as they tried to escape from the agents. They were still running when Naruto found that one of the agents had seemingly managed to catch up, but was surprised when that wasn't the case. Leaning against a wall reading a book, Naruto noticed that the individual was wearing a crow mask and quickly went to greet said individual, as well as seek their help. "Itachi," Naruto called out, getting the attention said Umbu agent, who was kinda surprised to see Naruto. "Naruto, aren't you supposed to be recovering or something?" Itachi asked as he looked over at Naruto with his mask still on, slightly flinching upon recognizing the girl next to Naruto, whom was seemingly worried upon seeing him. Naruto, why do you have her with you?" "Some guys with masks similar to Umbu masks were trying to kidnap her," Naruto explained, causing Itachi to raise an unnoticeable brow. "They even came up with an excuse like, she is supposed to see the Hokage and stuff." "Naruto, I think that dash," before Itachi could finish his sentence, the Umbu from before appeared, some still succumbing from the effects of the cherry bomb Naruto tossed earlier. "There you are," one coughed out, with a series of others following suit. "Now hand her over, Naruto, we're not trying to—" "Oh, Captain." All of the other Umbu quickly stood at attention upon noticing Itachi, who let out a small sigh before returning his book to his pouch. "All right, I see what happened now." Itachi sighed as he crouched down in front of Naruto as to get eye level with him. "Naruto, your friend there is supposed to be in her temporary stay with her newly appointed guardian right now, and she is supposed to meet with Lord Third." Naruto was confused, wondering why it was then that she was outside alone in the first place. But those thoughts were quickly erased upon the recognition of a loud yell. "Naruto!" someone yelled, causing him to flinch, as he turned along with a few others only to see him get tackled by Taunton. Oinking at him, as though she was in a fit, the pig marked the beginning of what was to come as loud footsteps were heard heading their way. Looking in the direction of the impending doom, everyone quickly noticed Tsunade, who was furious, before looking back at Naruto as though trying to decide on what to do. Ultimately, they settled on moving aside and taking the girl along with them. Naruto could only look up and see his death running towards him. Within seconds, Tsunade had reached them and held Naruto up by his shirt as she began to scold him and fling him around while doing it like a ragdoll. Many of the Umbu visibly shook in fright at the ferociousness being displayed by the woman, and before long Shizune had appeared seemingly exhausted. "What the hell makes you think that you can just walk out of the compound as you please with you just recovering?" Tsunade scolded him, only to get some incoherent response due to all the shaking that Naruto was experiencing. "What? I was on my way back." Naruto attempted to respond coherently. Tsunade wanted to hit him so badly but knew better and instead held him under her arm as she stormed off. "Sorry for the sudden brashness." Shizune apologized before catching up with her master. The others, though, could only sweat nervously at the whole scene that was displayed before them. Itachi, shaking the event off, knelt to the girl's eye level. "You know that you shouldn't have left without saying something," Itachi explained, only for the girl to grumble, causing Itachi to chuckle at her antics as he remembered Sasuke doing something similar whenever he got into trouble. "Now then, let's get you over to the Hokage. After all, today is your big day." With that, both groups were now out of the area, with Naruto being dragged to the compound and Itachi taking the girl to meet the Hokage. Naruto, still sore from Tsunade's manhandling, was sitting in his usual spot in the academy as he watched the rest of the students pack into the room. A couple of them spared him a few glances here and there, but Naruto didn't care. "Well, let's just get this day over with," Naruto thought to himself as he closed his eyes. Also, who the heck was that girl? I didn't recognize her. Is she a civilian's daughter? Once the rest of the class was packed in and seated, Irika walked in with Mizuki in tow. Mizuki took his normal seat, quickly sneaking a glare over at Naruto, but noticed that he wasn't paying any attention. However, the shadow in the corner did, causing Mizuki's heart to skip a beat slightly before returning his gaze back to Irika, who was standing in front of the desk. Alright class, before we start today's class, I'd like to introduce you to a new classmate who will be joining us for the rest of our time here at the academy. Irika announced as the class seemingly managed to bring its collective attention to the person walking in the classroom. A couple of guys seemed to smirk and whisper something to each other while the others held their opinions in check. Naruto, deciding to see who the new student was, opened his eyes and nearly lost it as he saw the same girl from earlier this morning standing next to Irika. Please introduce yourself to the class, Irika asked, to which the girl did. Hello. My name is Karen Uzumaki. A pleasure to meet you, she greeted before a bunch of eyes bulged in hearing the name. Naruto, for his part, finally broke as he jumped up and screamed. What the hell? You're an Uzumaki and you didn't even say anything. What the hell? Naruto exclaimed, causing the girl to jump in recognition of who it was yelling at her. Well, you never asked the entire time you were dragging me around, she retorted. And why should that be of any concern of yours? Irika, for his part, was unaware of what seemingly had already transpired between the two. Could only guess that they had met previously under different circumstances and decided to properly greet them of sorts. Well, Karen, that is Naruto, and he is also from the same clan as you, seeing as how his mother was an Uzumaki, Irika explained, getting a surprised look from Karen, as well as a couple others in the class who were oblivious to the fact that Naruto was a part of a clan. Wheels slowly began moving as Naruto and Karen began to fully understand their relation. All at the same time, eyes were on them both as they tried to make sense of everything that was happening. Chapter 6. A Promise. Once again, Naruto found himself in an awkward situation. In his class, not only was he still warranted an outcast, but also now he had to deal with the fact that the only other person bearing his clan's name hasn't exactly been talkative with him since their first encounter. So, 3 weeks later and you still won't talk to me, Naruto reflected as his red eyes drifted over to the redhead located on the other side of the room adjacent to him, and just like him, she was sitting alone with everyone not really wanting to sit near her. Seems like no matter the person, if you bear the Uzumaki name, you're bound for isolation. That sucks. Physically frowning, Naruto redirected his attention back to Irika in front of the class, who was busy explaining something involving genjutsu or something. Whatever it was, Naruto was already confident that he knew the material. As such, he did what one other person in the class was doing at this very moment. He took a nap. Time wasn't as courteous, though. Just as he was about to lay his head down, the ringing of the bell signaled the end of class for the day. With a groan, Naruto hadn't noticed that the time had gone by and decided to pull his head up. With a sigh, he gotten up from his seat, following all the others. The only other people in the classroom that weren't already making their way out the door was, of course, Irika, Choji, and Shikamaru. Walking over to his fellow two classmates, Naruto scratched the back of his head as he stopped in front of the two. Hey Choji, waiting for Shikamaru to wake up again? Naruto asked the Akamichi, who was steadily eating away at a bag of chips. Looking up at Naruto, Choji finished chewing the chips he had just previously stuffed into his mouth before speaking. Hey Naruto, and yeah, he's been asleep since I don't know. About when Irika-sensei was going over today's history lecture, Choji estimated while taking another handful of chips and chowing on them. I see that, Naruto stated as he decided to take the empty seat on Shikamaru's left, propping his feet up as to get comfortable. When do you think he'll wake up? Probably until someone wakes him up. Of course that won't be me. I have better things to do than wake him up, Choji stated as he continued munching on his snacks. Unknowingly to him, he was grabbing only air whenever he would go to grab some chips. So, what do you think will happen when he wakes up and sees that no one's here? Naruto asked Choji, who gave him a puzzled look in response. Want to get something to eat, basically? With that, Choji finally noticed that for the past few seconds that his hand had been trying to pry chips out of an empty bag. Sure. But wouldn't he get mad that we left him here without waking him up? Choji asked before both him and Naruto took notice of Irika walking over to them. No need to worry about him, Irika reassured. I'll take care of him, especially since he decided to fall asleep in my class again. Both Naruto and Choji exchanged a brief look before rising from their seats and making their way out of the class. After exiting the classroom, The two didn't even make it a few feet away from the door before Irika began yelling at the sleeping Shikamaru. Much of it seemed incoherent, but it was safe to say that the scorn was evident in Irika's tone. That happened much faster than the other day, Naruto remarked. I didn't even notice, Choji remarked as he rubbed his gut. The sound of a stomach growling was evident to the two, causing them to chuckle slightly with a slight sweat showing itself, almost in response. I'm hungry. Yeah, I can tell, Naruto chuckled as they made their way to the exit. Since I got to pick where we ate last time, you get to pick where we go this time, Choji. With that, Naruto could have sworn that he saw a slight twinkle in Choji's eyes as a menacing grin took its place across Choji's face. Well then, if I get to pick, Choji began as Naruto noticed that his friend was starting to drool a bit. Barbecue, Naruto nodded at Choji's pick. He understood that where they were going was Choji's favorite restaurant, just like Naruto favored Ichiraku's. As they exited the building, Naruto happened to notice that Karen was just making her way out of the academy grounds and into the bustling streets of Konoha. With a groan, Naruto was annoyed at the fact that she had refused to speak to him since they first met. Give it up, Naruto. It's been 3 weeks now, and considering she hasn't spoken to you yet, is pretty obvious that she doesn't want to either. I don't get it. We're from the same clan, so why doesn't she want to talk? Naruto grumbled in annoyance as they